He wouldn't let anyone treat him until a nurse spoke his unit's secret code. And here's the question that should bother you. What if the person you call difficult is actually fighting to stay alive in a war you can't see? It's 2 a.m. in Cleveland, rain hammering the ICU windows of Lakeview Regional. The hallway reeks of antiseptic and panic. A monitor shrieks. An orderly stumbles out, holding his wrist white-faced. Inside room 304, a dying man crouches on the bed with a plastic pitcher like a grenade eyes, scanning for threats that aren't there. The doctor reaches for sedation. The nurse reads his breathing, his posture. The old instincts still holding the line. Stay to the end, and you'll see how 5 forbidden words can save a life and ignite a hunt. If you're watching right now, hit like and comment the city you're listening from. The hallway did not exhale when Claire Monroe raised her hand and stopped the syringe. It tightened. Dr. Miles Carter stood with his shoulders squared and his patience already spent, a young man in clean scrubs trying to keep control of a situation that had gone feral. The overhead lights bleached the color from his face. Behind him, 2 security guards waited with gloved hands flexing open and shut, as if they could squeeze chaos back into a normal shape. Miles stared at Claire like she had just committed a crime. "Move, Monroe," he said. His voice stayed level, but his eyes were hot. "You are not the one signing the death certificate if he crashes." Claire did not look at him. She looked at the telemetry strip, the jagged rhythm flickering across the monitor. She looked at the sweat shining on the patient's temples through the cracked door. She listened to the sounds, the rasp of breath, the slap of bare heel against a mattress, the wet rattle deep in the chest that told her infection had climbed higher than it should. "He is septic," she said. "I know." "Then you know we do not have time for therapy hour," Miles snapped. "We have antibiotics, fluids, a line, and about 60 minutes before he turns his own blood into poison." Claire's mouth pressed into a thin line. She kept her tone calm, the same calm she used when mothers screamed and men bled out, and nobody in the room wanted to admit how close death really was. "I also know his heart is not tolerating this," she said. Miles followed her gaze. The monitor flashed heart rate climbing, then stuttering, then climbing again. "A fib with RVR," Claire said. "Rapid and irregular. He is running on adrenaline and infection. You sedate him hard in this state, and you can drop his pressure so fast his organs will quit before the antibiotics even touch the bloodstream." Miles's jaw tightened. "So what is your plan?" he said. "Ask him nicely to stop trying to break hospital staff." A nurse down the hall whispered into a phone, her voice shaking as she tried to sound professional. A charge nurse pushed through the knot of bodies and glanced inside room 304 with wide eyes. The orderly with the injured wrist sat on a chair, pale and staring at nothing, like his mind was replaying the moment again and again. Claire could feel the familiar shape of the night settling over the unit. Not quiet, not peace, but that edge that meant something was about to go wrong in a way nobody could chart. "Give me 5 minutes alone," Claire said. Miles laughed once sharp and humorless. "Alone," he repeated. "With a man who just assaulted my staff." "He did not assault your staff because he is evil," Claire said. "He did it because he believes you are the enemy." Miles leaned in, voice low, so the others would not hear the argument he could not afford to lose. "He is delirious," he said. "He has a fever, toxins in his system. He is dehydrated and possibly poisoning himself. He is not a soldier. He is a patient." Claire finally looked at him. She let her eyes hold his long enough for him to hear the part she was not saying. "Patients can be soldiers too," she said. "And soldiers can die in hospital beds because nobody knows how to stop the war inside their head." Miles turned his head toward the open door. Inside, Frank Dalton had dragged himself upright again, back against the raised headboard like it was cover. His hospital gown hung from his frame ribs, visible skin stretched tight over angles that looked carved by hunger and stress. A plastic water pitcher was clenched in his fist. His eyes swept the room, not wild, not unfocused, but measuring. "Stay back," Dalton rasped. "I know who sent you." Miles's expression shifted. Irritation gave way to something closer to disbelief. "You said his name?" Claire said quietly. Miles blinked. He came in as John Doe, he said. Wallet had a name, yes, but that does not prove anything. It proves he is not invisible, Claire said. And it proves he is still tracking who is in the room. Miles's phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced down, read whatever was there, then looked away, like the message made him angrier. Administration wants the police called, he said. Claire's eyes flicked to the guards, to the doorway, to the patient's face. If the police touch him, she said, you are going to turn a frightened man into a cornered one. Miles's nostrils flared. You have 5 minutes, he said, like he was granting her a favor he already regretted. 5. If he is not on a line by then, I am calling whoever will hold him down. Claire nodded once, not gratitude, just agreement. She stepped toward the room before anyone could change their mind. The closer she got, the louder the room felt. Not just the alarms and the shouts, but the energy of it like static in the air. The smell hit her next antiseptic sweat, and that sour tang that lived on the breath of infection. Rain tapped against the window, a hard, steady rhythm, like fingers drumming on a table. Frank Dalton's right eye tracked her. The left one was clouded by age or injury, milky and unfocused, but the right was sharp, pale, and cold. That eye had watched things people did not come back from with clean hands. He tightened his grip on the pitcher. Do not come closer, he warned. Claire stopped where he could see her hands. My name is Claire Monroe, she said. I am a nurse. I am here to help you. Dalton's lips peeled back in something that could have been a grin if it did not look so much like pain. Help, he said. That is a nice word. It is always a nice word at the start. Claire let the silence sit for a breath. You have a wound on your leg, she said. It is infected. You have a fever. You are dehydrated. I can clean it. I can give you medicine to fight the infection. No needles, Dalton said. No sleep. Claire heard the word sleep land in him like a threat. It was not a preference. It was a boundary drawn in blood. Claire's gaze dropped briefly to his leg. The sheet was rumpled and stained. The smell matched what she suspected. Infection that had been ignored until the body started screaming for help. You are going into shock if we do not treat it, she said. Dalton's eyes flicked to the IV pole near the bed. The clear bag swaying slightly looked harmless, but to him, it might as well have been a weapon. You sedate me and I talk, he said, voice low. You put me under and you think you own what is in my head. That is how it works. Claire felt a chill settle under her ribs. Who is you, Mr. Dalton? She asked. Dalton's head tilted slightly, not in confusion, but in listening. As if he could hear the hallway through the walls and was waiting for the moment the second wave came through the door. The director, he said. The handler. The one who signs papers and smiles. He sends you first. Claire let herself breathe slow. She mirrored him without making it obvious. In through the nose, controlled out through pursed lips. She could see his breathing now, not frantic but organized. Tactical breathing. Something someone learned to keep from drowning in panic. That was the first crack in the story the chart was trying to sell. Delirium did not breathe like that. Claire spoke softly. No director sent me, she said. Nobody owns me. I work the night shift in an ICU that smells like bleach and burnt coffee. I do not have time to belong to anyone. Dalton's grip loosened a fraction, then tightened again when the door shifted behind her. A guard stepped in boots, heavy, trying to look calm. Dalton's muscles coiled like wires pulled tight. Back, Dalton barked. Back or I start breaking bones. Claire turned her head and looked over her shoulder at the guard. Her eyes said what her voice did not need to. Out, she said. Give me space. The guard hesitated. Nurse, he started. Out, Claire repeated sharper. The guard stepped back into the hall and the door stayed open a crack. Claire could feel Miles standing out there like pressure. Claire turned back to Dalton. You said you know the protocol, she said. Tell me what you think happens when you let someone touch you. Dalton's laugh was dry. First, the sedative, he said. Then the bag goes over your head. Then the ride. Then the questions. Everybody asks questions like they are polite. They are never polite. Claire kept her voice steady. Has that happened to you, Mr. Dalton? Dalton's eyes hardened. I do not say names, he said. Claire nodded as if she understood, because in a way she did. Her father had lived in the same kind of silence. Not the quiet of peace, but the quiet of locked doors and lights turned off when fireworks cracked the sky. She could still see him sometimes sitting in the basement on the 4th of July, jaw, clenched eyes fixed on a wall that was not a wall to him. She pushed the memory down. Not because it did not matter, but because this room needed all of her. Okay, she said, no names. She took one small step forward, slow enough that he could see it coming. I am going to sit down, she said. I will not touch you. Dalton's gaze tracked her feet. His eyes flicked to her hands again. Claire pulled a chair from the corner and set it at the foot of the bed. She sat with her knees apart and her hands visible, palms resting lightly on her thighs. She did not cross her arms. She did not look away. Dalton watched her like a man watching a door that might blow open. Your doctor wants to sedate you, Claire said. I stopped him because I do not think you can handle a sedative right now. Your heart is too fast. Your blood pressure is unstable. If you crash, nobody wins. Dalton's eyelid twitched. The doctor is one of them, he said. Claire shook her head. He is a kid with good grades and bad bedside manner, she said. He is scared you will die on his shift. He is angry because he cannot control this. He is not your enemy. Dalton looked at her, searching for a lie. Claire continued. But I need your help, she said. Not because you owe us, because your body is failing. I can see it in your skin. I can hear it in your breathing. If you want to keep the line you have, to let me do the part I am trained for. Dalton's jaw worked like he was grinding down a response he did not want to give. The door in the hallway shifted again. The guard's shadow moved. Miles's voice came through, clipped. Time, Monroe. Claire did not answer. She kept her eyes on Dalton. Dalton's fingers tapped his thigh fast and precise. Tap, 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 tap. Not anxiety, not random. A pattern trying to hold something together. Claire's gaze drifted to his forearm where the sleeve of his gown had slid up. There was a scar there, jagged and old, as if something had burned through skin and memory at once. Beneath it, faded ink. A shape that might have been a crest, a knight something sharp-edged. Dalton noticed her looking. Stop staring, he snapped. Claire lifted her eyes back to his face. I am not staring, she said. I am paying attention. Dalton's breathing hitched. His eyes moved past her shoulder to the crack in the door to the hallway. His body stiffened. The second wave was coming, even if it was only in his mind. A sound like a belt buckle clinking a guard shifting weight. Dalton's grip on the pitcher tightened. Do not touch me, he growled, voice rising. I gave a direct order. Claire pushed up from the chair in one smooth motion and raised her hands again. Open palms. No sudden moves. Nobody is touching you, she said. Then the door swung wider. Miles stepped in with the syringe in his hand and a restraint strap looped over his wrist. 2 security guards followed like a tide. Enough, Miles said. Mr. Dalton, you are critically ill. This is a hospital. We are treating you now. Dalton's eyes widened. His gaze darted over their faces as if matching them to someone else. No, he whispered. No, no, no. The pitcher swung up. One guard lunged. Dalton kicked fast and vicious, even with a body that looked ready to break. His heel connected with the guard's thigh. The guard grunted, stumbled, then surged forward again. The second guard grabbed Dalton's shoulder. Dalton's roar filled the room, raw animal and layered with something older than fear. The heart monitor spiked. The number climbed and climbed. Miles lifted the syringe. Hold him, he snapped. Claire moved without thinking. She stepped between the needle and Dalton, blocking the line of sight. Stop, she said. Miles's eyes widened in fury. Monroe, move. Claire pointed at the monitor. Look at him, she said. Look at his rhythm. Miles's gaze flicked to the strip. It was chaotic, fast, the kind of rhythm that could tip into something lethal with the wrong push. Claire's voice dropped into the tone she used in trauma bays when people tried to argue while someone bled. If you hit him with a sedative while his adrenaline is this high, she said, you drop his pressure, you drop his perfusion, and you risk arrest. You are not treating him. You are gambling with his heart. Miles swallowed, his hand wavered. Dalton thrashed under the guard's weight, but his words broke into something that did not belong to a hospital. Unit 19, heavy static. Confirm, extract, he gasped. Unit 19, heavy static. Claire's skin prickled. Unit 19. It landed in her like a code she was not supposed to hear. The guard's forearm pressed into Dalton's chest. Dalton wheezed, eyes wet now, terror taking over what rage could not contain. "Broken arrow," Dalton screamed. "Broken arrow." Claire felt the room shift. The air changed. It was not a man fighting nurses anymore. It was a man back in a place where screaming meant warning, where the ceiling meant canopy, where the bright hospital light meant flares. Miles stared at Dalton, then at Claire. "He is going to hurt someone," Miles said through clenched teeth. "He is hurting because you are hurting him," Claire said. "Back off." Miles's face flushed red. "I cannot authorize you being alone with him," he said. "If he attacks you, if he codes, if he dies, you want that on my license." Claire stepped closer to Miles until he could hear her over Dalton's ragged breath. "If he codes, because you forced sedation into a body already on the edge," she said, "that is on your license. Give me 5 minutes. Alone." A long beat stretched between them. The guards held Dalton down, uncertain now. Miles's eyes flicked to the monitor, to the erratic rhythm, to the sweat pouring off Dalton's face. Then Miles exhaled hard. 5 minutes, he said. "If you are not placing a line by then, I call the police, and we do this the hard way." Claire nodded once. "Everyone out," she said. The guards hesitated. Dalton's eyes followed them, lips moving as if counting steps. Miles pointed toward the door. "Out," he snapped, then added to Claire, "Do not get yourself killed." The guards backed away. Miles stepped out last, still holding the syringe, still looking like he wanted to throw it at the wall. The door clicked shut. For a moment, the room was too quiet, as if the hospital had pulled its breath in to listen. Dalton stayed pressed against the headboard, knees drawn up, shaking. The pitcher still in his hand, knuckles white. His eyes fixed on the door, waiting for it to burst open again. Claire did not move toward him. She walked to the window and closed the blinds, shutting out the lightning flash that made his pupils jump. She turned off the overhead light and left only the small lamp near the sink, a softer glow that reduced harsh shadows. She pulled the chair back to the foot of the bed and sat again. Hands visible, voice absent. Dalton's breathing stayed harsh for a few seconds, then began to slow. His fingers kept tapping. Tap, tap, tap. The rhythm was fast, then steadier, then fast again. It sounded like a signal being sent through skin and bone. Claire watched him the way she watched a trauma patient's chest rise and fall, the way she watched pupils in a head injury, the way she watched hands that might reach for a weapon. She let him see that she was not afraid of him, even if fear was sitting cold in her stomach. Dalton's gaze flicked to her and away again. He swallowed, throat working. "They always send the nice one first," he whispered. Claire kept her voice low, almost conversational, like speaking across a kitchen table at 3 in the morning. "You must be exhausted," she said. Dalton's tapping stopped for a fraction of a second. His eyes narrowed. "Do not call me that," he rasped. "Call you what Claire asked." He stared at her like he did not want to say it out loud. "Exhausted," he said finally, like the word tasted wrong. Claire nodded slowly. "Fine," she said. "Then I will say this. You are sick. Very sick. And I am running out of ways to keep you alive without touching you." Dalton's fingers started tapping again, slower now, as if the rhythm was changing. Claire's eyes drifted to his forearm again, to the faded crest beneath the burn scar. The night shape was barely visible, but it was there. Not a tattoo you got on a dare. Not something decorative. It looked like an emblem, a mark meant to identify. Claire felt a memory press up behind her ribs, the image of her father's arm when she was a kid, the day she saw ink there by accident, and he pulled his sleeve down like he had been caught holding a gun. Claire did not push the memory away this time. She let it sit because it belonged in this room. Dalton's gaze followed hers again. "You saw that," he said. "I see a lot of things," Claire answered. Dalton's right eye glittered. "That gets people killed," he said softly. Claire met his stare and did not flinch. "It also keeps people alive," she said. Dalton's breathing hitched. The fever made him shiver hard, a tremor rolling through his shoulders. He tightened the sheet around himself like a blanket could be armor. Claire glanced at the clock on the wall. The second hand moved with cruel steadiness. She could almost feel Miles on the other side of the door, counting down the minutes like a judge waiting to bring the hammer down. Claire leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice. Even more. "Frank," she said, using his name like a test. "Nobody is taking you out of this room. Not while I am in here. Dalton's eyes snapped to her. Do not say my name, he warned. Claire held his gaze. Then tell me what you want me to call you, she said. Dalton's lips trembled. For a second, he looked older than his anger. He looked like a man carrying too much with too little body left to hold it. Hawk, he whispered. Claire nodded as if it was the most normal thing in the world. Okay, Hawk, she said. Talk to me. The tapping slowed. The room settled into a tense kind of quiet. The air smelled like disinfectant and storm water and something metallic under it all. Claire stayed seated, hands open, posture. Calm, watching his eyes, his breathing, the way his head tilted toward the door, like he could hear danger gathering in the hall. Her voice remained steady, measured, as if she was speaking to someone on the edge of a ledge and trying not to startle them. Tell me what you are guarding, Hawk, she said. Hawk's eyes stayed on the door as if it might splinter inward at any second. The tapping on his thigh had slowed, but it had not stopped. It sounded like a code being sent from a place that did not trust words. Claire kept her voice low. Tell me what you are guarding, Hawk, she said. He swallowed. His throat bobbed like it hurt to move. You really do not know, he whispered. Claire watched the way his gaze flicked left to right, mapping the room. Sink, window, corners. The narrow strip of hallway visible through the cracked door. He was not searching for an escape route like a fleeing man. He was checking angles like someone preparing for contact. I know you are guarding something, Claire said. I can see it in how you sit, in how you listen, in how you breathe. Hawk's lips tightened. The skin around his right eye creased with suspicion. You think you can read me? He rasped. I think I have spent 20 years watching fear wear different faces, Claire said. Yours is not the kind that begs. Hawk's grip on the pitcher loosened just enough for Claire to see the tremor in his fingers. Not weakness. Fever. The body protesting what the mind refused to accept. My name is Frank Dalton, he said, as if saying it out loud might protect him. I work construction. I do steel. I do not do whatever story you are trying to pin on me. Claire nodded slowly, letting him have the lie without calling it a lie. Okay, Frank, she said. His jaw tightened again. Do not use that name like you own it, he snapped. Claire held her hands up, a little higher, palms still visible. I do not own anything in this room, she said. Not even time. As if the word had summoned it, the clock on the wall ticked louder in the quiet. Somewhere in the hall, a cartwheel squeaked. A distant monitor alarm chirped, then fell silent. The ICU kept moving even when one room tried to turn into a battlefield. Claire shifted her weight forward in the chair, just a little. You do steel, she said. What do you build? Hawk stared at her. His eyes went flat for a second, like a door closing. Bridges, he said finally. Claire let that sit. Bridges. Steel. Weight. Things that held other people up. The answer felt chosen, not accidental. I believe you, she said. He scoffed, but the sound broke halfway through into a cough that scraped up something wet. He covered his mouth with the back of his wrist. When he lowered it, Claire saw a smear of pink. Your lungs are fighting, Claire said. Hawk's eyes narrowed. You going to scare me into cooperation? He said. No, Claire said. I am going to tell you the truth the same way I tell it to everyone in this unit. Your body is losing ground. You can keep your perimeter. You can keep your secrets. But you cannot keep your infection from eating you alive without help. Hawk's gaze dropped to the IV pole again. The clear bag swayed in the softer light like a pendulum. Help is a needle, he whispered. Help is sleep. Claire heard the way his voice changed on the word sleep. It turned thin. Not weakness. Fear with a blade edge. Claire leaned back again, giving him space. Tell me about the sleep, she said. Hawk's fingers tapped faster, then slowed, then stopped. He stared at the wall beside Claire's shoulder like he was watching something there that she could not see. When you sleep, you forget where you are, he said. You forget what you promised. You forget what you buried. Claire kept her breathing slow. She did not push. And when you forget, he continued, you wake up talking. You wake up answering questions you never meant to answer. Claire's stomach tightened. She had heard that before in other forms. Trauma did that. Pain did that. Drugs did that. Men who had lived too long with locked doors in their minds did that. Who asks you questions, Hawk? She said. Hawk's gaze snapped to her face. His pupils were wide, not from shock, from calculation. You are good at this, he said softly. Soft voice, soft chair, soft light. You want me to lay it all down. You want me to hand you the keys. Claire let the accusation slide off. I want you alive, she said. Hawk's laugh came out rough. Alive, he repeated. Like it is simple. Claire did not smile. She did not soften the truth. Alive is not simple, she said. It is work. Hawk stared at her for a long moment. His shoulders rose and fell with uneven breaths. Fever made his skin shine. Sweat gathered at his hairline, then slid down his temple. Claire noticed his right hand again. The knuckles, the small, healed scars across the back of it. The calluses in places that did not match construction alone. Those hands knew impact. Those hands had learned to hit and keep moving. Claire's gaze drifted to his forearm. The sleeve of his gown had slipped again, exposing more of the faded emblem beneath the burn scar. The lines were faint, but she could make out the shape now. A crest, a knight figure, something like a bolt cutting down the middle. Hawk followed her eyes and his whole body tightened. Do not look at that, he warned. Claire lifted her gaze back to his face. You are hiding it, she said. That makes it important. Hawk's breathing quickened. The picture rose half an inch. Claire did not move. I am not going to grab you, she said. I am not going to sedate you. I am not going to call anyone in here. I am going to ask you one question. Hawk's voice came out like gravel. One, he said. Claire spoke carefully, like she was placing a glass down on a hard surface without letting it crack. Does that crest mean Unit 19 to you? She asked. The room went still. Hawk's tapping stopped. The picture froze in his hand. His face drained of color in a way the fever could not explain. For a long beat, he did not breathe. Then he exhaled in a slow, controlled release, as if he had been struck. You should not know that, he whispered. Claire felt the hair lift along her arms. Not fear, not exactly. Recognition. The feeling of stepping into a story that had been hidden in her own house for years. I grew up with a man who did not talk, Claire said. Not about what he did. Not about where he went. Not about why his hands shook when the sky lit up. Hawk's eyes narrowed again, but this time, it was different. Less threat. More focus. Like a scope tightening. Your father, he said. Claire nodded once. His name was Raymond Monroe, she said. Hawk's jaw clenched, the muscles in his cheeks flexed. A lot of fathers have names, he said. Claire swallowed. The memory pressed closer, vivid now. A basement. A couch. A small television turned down low. Her father, sitting in the dark on July 4th while the rest of the neighborhood cheered outside. He did not watch fireworks, Claire said. He sat with the lights off like he was waiting for something to hit. Hawk's gaze shifted away, but his fingers started tapping again slower, like a pulse. That does not make him special, he said. Claire leaned forward, voice still calm. He had the same crest, she said. Same night. Same bolt. He kept it covered. He kept it like a wound. Hawk's eyes snapped back to her. Where did you see it? He demanded. Claire held his stare. When I was 14, she said. He came home from work, and his sleeve rode up. I saw it. He pulled it down so fast, he tore the fabric. He looked at me like I had caught him holding a gun. Hawk's breathing changed again. Controlled. Measured. His gaze flicked to the door, then back to Claire. Raymond, he repeated, tasting the name. What was his call sign? Claire felt her throat tighten. She had never said it to anyone outside her family. Saying it now felt like opening a locked box in the middle of an ICU. Ironwood, she said. Hawk's eyes widened a fraction. Then he narrowed them, suspicion returning like a wave. That could be anything, he rasped. A nickname. A bedtime story. Claire shook her head slowly. It was not a nickname, she said. It was the only name that made him stop shaking when he woke up at night. Hawk's fingers stopped tapping again. The room felt smaller. The air felt heavier. Even the distant ICU noises seemed to hold back. Claire's voice dropped even lower. He used to wake up in the middle of the night, she said. Not screaming, not yelling, just sitting up like he had been shot awake. His eyes would be open but not seeing me. He would stare past my mother like she was smoke. Then he would whisper words like he was sending a radio check. Hawk's lips parted. His throat worked, but no sound came out. Claire watched the wet shine gather at the corner of his good eye. He blinked hard, like he could blink it away. He would repeat it, Claire continued, over and over, like prayer, like verification. Hawk's voice came out hoarse. Say it, he demanded. Claire held still. Hawk leaned forward slightly, fever shaking his frame. His gaze locked on her mouth. Say it, he repeated sharper, now. Claire's heart pounded. Not because she was afraid of him attacking, because she knew there were words that once spoken could not be taken back. Claire glanced at the clock again. The second hand kept moving. She could feel miles in the hall. She could feel the guards waiting. She could feel the pressure of protocol building outside this door, like water behind a dam. Claire looked back at Hawk. I do not say it unless I have to, she said. Hawk's mouth twisted. You already said Unit 19, he whispered. You already stepped into the dark. Do not pretend you are careful now. Claire exhaled slowly. I am careful, she said. That is why I am still alive. Hawk's eyes burned. If you are lying, he said, I will know. Claire nodded. I hope you do, she said. Hawk's breathing quickened. His shoulders trembled. Say it, he rasped. Give me the words. Claire held his gaze and let the memory come fully. She saw her father in the kitchen one winter morning, hands wrapped around a mug he did not drink from. She had been home from school with the flu. The house had been quiet. He thought she was asleep on the couch. She had watched him stand at the sink, staring out at snow falling like ash. His lips had moved barely. A sentence repeated like he could not stop it. Claire heard that sentence now in her own head, as clear as if he were standing in this ICU room. She leaned forward, not too close, just enough that Hawk would not need to strain. Her voice became a whisper. The river runs black at dawn, Claire said. Hawk froze. The pitcher slipped a fraction in his hand, then steadied. His eyes widened. The fever tremor in his shoulders did not stop, but his face changed. The hard set of his jaw softened as if something had unlocked. For a long moment, he did not speak. Claire watched him, breath held. Then Hawk's lips moved. But the steel sings at night, he whispered. His voice cracked on the last word, like the phrase pulled something up from deep water. Claire felt a heat sting behind her eyes. She blinked it back. She did not look away. Hawk stared at her as if she had just stepped through a door he thought was welded shut. Ironwood, he whispered again, like he was tasting a ghost. Raymond. Claire nodded slowly. He died 3 years ago, she said. Lung cancer. He did not talk much at the end either, but the medicine made him loose. He said names he never said before. He said 19. He said, hold the line. Hawk's gaze dropped to the bed sheets. His fingers dug into the fabric. Raymond, he said, voice rough. He was supposed to leave before the river crossing. Claire's chest tightened. He came home anyway, she said. He came home and he lived like he never really arrived. Hawk let out a sound that might have been a laugh if it had not carried so much grief. That was Raymond, he whispered. He always crawled back. Claire did not correct him. She did not tell him her father had not crawled back. Her father had walked through a front door with groceries and smiled at a neighbor and carried a secret like shrapnel inside his ribs. Crawling was a different shape of survival, but it was still survival. Hawk lifted his head again. His eyes were wet now, but the tears did not fall. His face tightened like he was holding them back by force. Why are you here? He asked. Why are you doing this? Claire's voice stayed steady. Because you are dying, she said. And because I know what it looks like when a man tries to die standing up just to avoid falling asleep. Hawk's gaze flicked to the IV pole again. He swallowed hard. It is not the needle, he whispered. It is what the needle means. Claire nodded. Then let us change what it means, she said. Hawk stared at her, breathing harsh again, but not panicked. He looked like a man fighting a decision, not fighting an enemy. Claire kept her tone gentle, but firm, the way she spoke to trauma patients who were drowning in their own bodies. You can keep your perimeter, she said. You can keep your secrets. But let me treat the infection. Let me give you antibiotics. Let me keep you alive while you decide what you do with the rest. Hawk's eyes narrowed. And you swear, he said. You swear you will not put me under. Claire hesitated only long enough to respect the weight of what he asked. "I swear I will not sedate you," she said. "Not unless your heart stops and I am forced to choose between your anger and your pulse." Hawk's jaw flexed. He hated the honesty. He needed it. The doorknob rattled. Claire did not turn her head. She could feel the pressure outside without seeing it. Miles's voice came through the crack sharp. "Monroe time." Hawk's eyes flashed to the door. His body tensed like a spring. Claire lifted her hand slightly, a signal to keep still. "They are not coming in," she said. "Not yet." Hawk's breathing turned shallow. "They always come in," he whispered. Claire leaned forward, lowering her voice even more, not because she feared microphones, but because Hawk's mind lived in a world where walls listened. "Look at me," she said. Hawk's gaze jerked back to her. His eyes were wild again for a second, then steadied as he focused. "Permission to treat Claire," said quietly. Hawk stared at her like the words were a test. "Say it right," he whispered. Claire understood. The phrase was not just a greeting. It was structure. It was a chain that held men together when everything else burned away. Claire straightened slightly in the chair. She made her voice firm, not loud. "Permission to treat Sergeant," she said. Hawk's throat worked. His hand loosened on the pitcher. Slowly, like a man lowering a weapon, he set it on the bed beside him. "Permission granted," he said. Claire did not move fast. She moved with deliberate care, as if any sudden motion could shatter what they had built. "Thank you," she said. Hawk's eyes stayed on her hands as she stood. He watched every finger, every reach. Claire walked to the supply drawer. She opened it slowly. The rustle of packaging sounded too loud in the quiet. She chose a fresh IV starter kit, saline flush tape. She took a small vial of antibiotic from the medication tray that had been pushed against the wall. She kept her body between Hawk and the door. Hawk's voice came out rough, but there was a new shape to it now. Still hard, still suspicious, but not feral. "You are the designated medical," he said. Claire glanced at him. "Yes," she said. Hawk's eyes flicked to the door again. "If anyone else comes close," he said, "I treat it as aggression." Claire nodded. "Then we keep them back," she said. She stepped closer to the bed, stopping at the edge of his invisible boundary. She did not reach for him yet. "Show me your arm," she said. "Your right arm if you can." Hawk hesitated. His breathing tightened again. Then he slowly extended his right arm, muscles trembling from fever and strain. Claire sat on the edge of the chair, again closer now near his forearm. She kept her movements smooth, precise. She swabbed the skin with alcohol. The smell rose sharp and clean. Hawk flinched at the cold, not the touch, but the sensation. Claire looked up at him. "I am going to put a tourniquet on," she said. "It will feel tight." Hawk's jaw clenched. "Do it," he said. Claire wrapped the band around his upper arm and pulled it snug. A vein rose beneath the skin, blue and fragile. Hawk's eyes stayed fixed on the needle in the kit, tracking it like a predator tracking a threat. His breathing quickened again. Claire did not rush. She anchored the moment with her voice. "In through your nose," she said. "Hold. Out slow." Hawk stared at her. Then, without realizing it, he followed. "In. Hold. Out." Again, Claire said. Hawk's shoulders rose and fell. The rhythm became steadier. The fever tremor did not stop, but his panic eased. Claire positioned the catheter. She watched his face, not the vein. She was ready to stop if his eyes flashed to violence. "Cold pinch," she said softly. She inserted the needle with practiced precision. Flashback. She advanced the catheter, pulled the needle, secured the line. Hawk sucked in a breath sharp. His fingers curled. He did not yank away. Claire taped the catheter down, then connected saline. She flushed gently. The line held. Hawk stared at his own arm like he could not believe it. "It is in," Claire said. Hawk swallowed. "You did not trick me," he whispered. Claire shook her head. "I do not need to trick you," she said. "I need you to live." The doorknob rattled harder. Miles's voice came again, louder. Monroe opened the door. Claire kept her hand on the tape, finishing the last strip with care. She looked at Hawk. "Do you want me to open it?" she asked. Hawk's eyes narrowed. "Only if you are the one who touches me," he said. "Tell him." Claire stood and walked to the door. She opened it just enough to step into the gap, blocking the view inside with her body. Miles stood there with 2 security guards and the strap still looped over his wrist. His face was tense with anger and relief, the kind of anger that came from being forced to wait while a patient's life teetered. "Is he restrained?" Miles demanded. "No," Claire said. Miles's eyes widened. "Are you out of your mind, Monroe?" Claire kept her voice even. "The line is in," she said. "Antibiotics can start now." He did it voluntarily. Miles stared past her shoulder, trying to see. Hawk's voice cut through from the bed, calm and commanding in a way that made the guards stiffen. "Dr. Hawk said." Miles blinked, surprised by the change in tone. Hawk's voice held no slur, no panic. It sounded like a man who had given orders in places where disobedience got people killed. "Stand down," Hawk said. Miles's mouth opened, then closed again. "That is not how this works," Miles said. But his voice was less certain now. Hawk's gaze fixed on Miles through the gap. "The nurse is the designated medical," Hawk said. "She is the only one who touches me. If anyone else comes within 3 feet of this bed, I treat it as aggression." One of the guards shifted, unsure whether to step forward. Miles's face flushed. "This is a hospital," he said. "You do not set the rules." Hawk's eyes did not move. "Then you can watch me die," Hawk said. "Or you can let her work." Claire felt Miles hesitate. She could see the calculation behind his eyes. Legal liability, patient safety, staff safety, his own fear of losing control. Claire kept her posture steady. "He is consenting," Claire said. "He is stable enough for antibiotics. Let me do my job." Miles's jaw clenched. He looked at the monitor inside at the heart rate lowering slightly now that Hawk was not fighting. He looked at the IV line taped clean and secure. Finally, he exhaled through his nose. "Fine," he said. "Start the antibiotic, but if he so much as twitches toward you, we restrain." Hawk's voice came again, colder. "No restraints," Hawk said. Miles's eyes flashed. "You do not get to negotiate medical care like a hostage situation," he snapped. Hawk's gaze remained steady. "I already am the hostage," he said. Claire stepped closer to Miles, lowering her voice so the guards would not hear. "Give me 10 minutes," she said. "The antibiotic needs to run." He is calmer. "Do not break this." Miles stared at her. For a moment, the young doctor looked less arrogant and more exhausted, the kind of exhaustion that came from realizing the textbooks did not cover this. "10, he said. "Then we reassess." Claire nodded. Miles pointed at the guards. "Out," he ordered, then looked at Claire again. "Keep that door open." Claire did not argue. The door stayed cracked, but the guards backed away. Miles moved down the hall, still watching like a man who did not trust the quiet. Claire returned to the bedside. Hawk's eyes followed her the whole way, but the frantic edge was gone. He looked drained, like the fight had been keeping him upright, and now he had to face his own weakness. Claire hung the antibiotic and connected it to the line. The fluid began to drip slow and steady. Hawk watched the clear drops fall. "That is the medicine," Claire said. "It fights infection." Hawk's voice was quieter now. "And it does not make me sleep," he said. "No," Claire said. "It does not make you sleep." Hawk's shoulders sagged a fraction. He let his head rest back against the pillow, still tense, still listening, but not ready to strike. Claire adjusted the blanket around him. She kept her touch light and deliberate, always within his sight. His eyes drifted to her face. "You said Raymond died," he murmured. Claire swallowed. "Yes," she said. Hawk's lips pressed together. "He should have been a ghost," Hawk whispered. "That was the deal. That was how we stayed alive. We disappeared." Claire felt her throat tighten again. "He disappeared in ways you cannot see on paper," she said. "He disappeared inside our house." Hawk's gaze softened for a moment, grief cracking the hard surface. "Ironwood," he whispered. Claire nodded. "He was my dad," she said. Hawk's eyes closed for a second, then opened again. He looked at her like he was trying to match her face to a memory. "You have his eyes," he said quietly. "Not the color. The look. Like you are watching the world for the moment it turns." Claire felt the sting behind her eyes return. She kept it under control. "He taught me how to stay calm when someone else is losing it," she said. Hawk's breathing slowed. The fever still shook him, but the fight had left his hands. The pitcher sat forgotten by his thigh. For the first time since Claire had walked into the room, the alarms quieted to a steadier rhythm. The heart rate eased down. The oxygen saturation held. Claire stood beside the bed and checked the line again, then the medication pump. She kept her body between Hawk and the door. Hawk's voice came soft, almost reluctant. "You know what you said," he murmured. "You know what it means." Claire looked at him. "It means you heard my father once," she said. "It means you are not alone in this." Hawk's jaw tightened as if the word alone hurt. "We were not supposed to be found," he whispered. Claire leaned slightly closer. "You were found because you are dying in my ICU," she said. "I do not care what a file says. I care that you are here, breathing, holding on by nails." Hawk's eyes flicked to the clock, then back to Claire. "They are going to come again," he said. "The ones who do not wear uniforms." Claire felt a chill move through her, sharp and sudden, like the air had changed temperature without warning. "Who?" she asked. Hawk's gaze fixed on the crack of the door. His voice dropped thin with certainty. "The man who makes badges look real," he whispered. "The man who turns places like this into a trap." Claire stared at him, trying to read whether this was fever speaking or memory. Hawk's fingers twitched, then stilled. "He is not dead," Hawk murmured. "He does not stay dead." Claire kept her voice steady, even as her pulse kicked harder. "What is his name, Hawk?" she asked. Hawk's throat worked. He swallowed like the name was a shard. He did not answer. Instead, he squeezed his eyes shut and turned his face slightly toward the pillow, as if he could hide behind exhaustion for a moment. Claire watched the antibiotic drip. Drop by drop, the medicine moved into his bloodstream. A small, steady thing against a war that had lasted decades in his mind. Claire adjusted the blanket again, then checked his temperature with the scanner. Still high. The fever would not break instantly. Hawk's eyes opened again, unfocused now, heavy with fatigue. "Claire," he whispered. She leaned in. "Yes," she said. His voice was barely there. "Do not let him touch me," he murmured. "Promise." Claire met his gaze. "I promise," she said. Hawk exhaled slowly. His shoulders relaxed a fraction. His eyelids drifted closed, not sleep, not fully, but the first surrender of the body after too much fighting. Claire stayed by the bed, listening to his breathing, watching the monitor, watching the crack in the door. The ICU hummed beyond the room, nurses moved, machines clicked, rain kept tapping the window like impatient fingers. Claire did not move away. She had wanted him alive, and she had gotten the first step. Now she needed him to stay that way long enough for the rest of the night to stop sharpening its knives. Claire stayed at the bedside until Hawk's breathing found a rhythm that did not sound like a man running from something. The antibiotic dripped in slow, steady drops. The monitor calmed into a pattern that still carried danger but no longer screamed it. In the dim lamplight, his face looked older. Not just late 60s older. It looked worn down by years of sleeping with one eye open. His jaw was clenched even in rest, as if his muscles did not trust surrender. The fever made his skin shine. The veins along his temple pulsed with every beat. Claire glanced at the crack in the door again. Nothing moved. No boots. No voices. The ICU's distant sounds rose and fell in the background. Like a tide carts rolling soft calls between nurses, the occasional alarm from another room. She turned back to Hawk. She had promised not to let anyone else touch him. She had promised not to sedate him. She had done what she could without breaking him. Now she needed to know what she was actually fighting. She reached for the chart clipped near the foot of the bed and skimmed it without taking her eyes fully off him. The admission note was thin and clean, like someone had scrubbed it down to the bare minimum. Male unknown at arrival, found down near a construction site, presumed fall injury fever, confusion, possible sepsis. John Doe, until ID verified. The wallet had been documented, but the rest of his history read like a blank wall. It bothered her in a way she could not explain with medical language. Sepsis did not arrive alone. It came with a trail, a wound, a story, a timeline. The body always told you where it had been hurt if you knew how to listen. Claire set the chart down and checked the IV site again. No swelling, no redness. The line was running clean. Hawk's pulse was still fast, but not climbing. She leaned closer and listened to his lungs. The stethoscope felt cold against his skin. Hawk flinched in his sleep, but he did not wake. She heard coarse breath sounds wet at the bases. Infection had likely spread beyond the leg. Claire's fingers hovered over the blanket. She paused. The smell was still there underneath antiseptic. Metal and old sweat. Something faintly sharp that reminded her of pennies. She thought of the way Hawk had said sleep, the way his voice had thinned, as if that word carried a knife. She thought of how he had looked at the IV pole, like it might bite. She looked at the chart again. Fall at a construction site. Abrasion. Bruising. Claire's hand moved. She lifted the blanket slowly, carefully, keeping it from snapping or rustling too loudly. She exposed his leg first. The wound was worse than the chart suggested. Angry red, swollen, heat radiating off it. It was not a simple infection. It looked like something that had been left untreated until the body started losing ground. She cleaned gently around it, replacing the soiled dressing with fresh gauze. The smell of infection rose stronger, now sour and heavy. Hawk's face tightened. His lips moved silent words. Claire watched him closely. He did not wake. She lowered the blanket back down over his leg and then hesitated again, her gaze drawn to his midsection. The gown was bunched up around his ribs, exposing the hollow between them where his skin rose. Fell. The chart mentioned bruising on the abdomen from the fall. Claire's fingers slid under the edge of the gown. Her hand stopped. The skin beneath was not bruised. It was stitched. Not hospital stitched. Not neat. Not evenly spaced. This was rough, hurried work, like someone had closed the wound with whatever was available while watching the door. Claire's throat tightened. She lifted the gown a little higher. A fresh wound ran across his lower abdomen, swollen and angry. The stitches were thick and irregular. The thread did not look like suture. It looked like line. Fishing line, the kind that cut into skin when pulled too tight. Dried blood clung to the edges. Her heart gave a hard kick. Hawk had not fallen. Hawk had been shot. Claire stood very still, as if movement might trigger something outside the room. The hospital's policies flashed through her mind in a quick, cold sequence. Mandatory reporting. Document the injury. Notify security. Notify law enforcement. Preserve evidence. Protect staff. She looked at Hawk's face. His eyes were closed. His jaw was clenched, even in rest. He looked like a man who would rather die than be questioned. She thought of the way he had warned her. Do not let him touch me. She thought of the phrase he used, the man who makes badges look real. Claire's mouth went dry. If she called the police, she would start a chain she could not stop. Radios, names, a report, a record that would exist in systems she did not control. She pictured the wrong person hearing the word gunshot and being on the way before sunrise. Claire swallowed and forced herself to breathe slowly. In through the nose. Hold. Out. She lowered the gown carefully and smoothed it back down as if she had never looked. Then she looked again at the wound's outline beneath the fabric and felt something hard settle into her chest. This was not just a patient in crisis. This was a man being hunted. Claire reached for a fresh abdominal pad from the supply drawer. She peeled the packaging open as quietly as possible. The sound still felt too loud. She lifted the gown again and covered the wound with the pad. The stitches were already crusted with dried blood, but the pad hid the pattern. She taped it down with clean white tape, the kind that made everything look orderly on paper. Her hands trembled just slightly. She willed them steady. In the chart, she wrote with a controlled pen. Dressing changed. Skin irritation noted. Abdominal abrasion monitored. Abrasion. The word looked harmless on the page. The lie sat there with clean edges. Claire capped the pen and stared at the chart for a beat too long. Her pulse thudded in her ears. Her mind ran through consequences like a scan. License, job, court, jail. She could almost hear her own voice answering questions in a sterile room while someone else decided whether she was a hero or a criminal. Claire set the chart down. She turned back to Hawk. His breathing had shifted. He was waking. His eyelids fluttered. His right eye opened first sharp, even through fatigue. It fixed on her hands. Claire stayed still. She did not hide the pad. She did not pretend she was not near his abdomen. Hawk stared at her for a long moment. Then his gaze dropped to the tape line. "You saw it," he said. His voice was barely a rasp, but it held certainty. Claire nodded once. She did not offer comfort yet. She did not dress it up. "Yes," she said. Hawk's throat worked. Pain pulled at the corners of his mouth. "You should have called it in," he whispered. Claire met his gaze. "If I called it in," she said, "who shows up first?" Hawk's jaw tightened. His eyes drifted toward the door as if he could see through it. "Not the people you want," he murmured. Claire kept her voice low. "Then tell me what I am dealing with, Hawk." Hawk exhaled slowly. His breath shuddered at the end. Fever made him shake again, but the tremor looked smaller, now contained. "A man," he said. "A man who does not like loose ends." Claire watched his face, searching for delirium, for confusion, for fever dreams. She did not see it. She saw fear real and measured. Claire's gaze shifted to the chair by the wall, where Hawk's clothes had been tossed into a plastic bag. A worn canvas jacket sat folded on top, stained with rain and grease. It looked like something a man wore to blend into crowds. Claire walked to it and picked it up carefully. Hawk's eyes tracked her. "Do not dig," he warned. Claire paused. "I am checking for your ID," she said. "Medication allergies, anything I should know." Hawk did not answer. He looked away, but his shoulders stayed tense. Claire slid her hand into the jacket pocket and felt something heavy cold. She pulled it out. A Zippo lighter. It was scratched and dented, the kind of wear that came from being carried for years. The metal was cold in her palm. The lid was stiff, as if it had been forced open too many times. There was an engraved mark on the side, faint beneath the scratches, a crest shape that echoed the tattoo on his arm. Claire turned it over. The bottom plate looked slightly off, like it did not sit flush. There was a hairline seam where there should not have been one. Claire glanced at Hawk. His gaze sharpened. "Put that down." "He's dim days die," he said. Claire's fingers held the lighter anyway. She did not open it. She did not flick it. She just studied it. "This is important," she said. Hawk's voice came out harsher than he intended. "It is not yours." Claire lifted her eyes to him. "Then tell me why it is here," she said. Hawk's breathing quickened. He tried to sit up and immediately winced, his hand moving to his abdomen. Pain carved through him. The antibiotic had not had time to soften that. Claire stepped closer and steadied him by the shoulder-light touch, always in view. "Easy," she said. Hawk's jaw clenched hard. He looked like he wanted to bite down on the pain and swallow it. Claire looked at the lighter again, then at the seam. Her fingernails slid under the edge of the bottom plate. Hawk's eyes widened. "Do not," he hissed. The plate popped free with a soft click. Inside the hollowed fuel chamber, wrapped in a scrap of oiled paper, was a tiny storage card. Claire's breath caught. Hawk stared at it like it was a live round. "You found it," he said softly. Claire held the lighter in her palm and did not move. The card looked harmless, a sliver of plastic and metal, but the weight in the room shifted as if she had pulled a pin. "Is this what you are guarding?" Claire asked. Hawk's gaze flicked to the crack in the door. "Not guarding," he murmured. "Carrying." Claire swallowed. "What is on it?" Hawk's voice dropped. "Names," he said. "Places." "Cordamai proof." Claire's skin prickled. "Proof of what?" Hawk's eyes closed for a second. When they opened again, they looked far away. "Of what was done," he said. "Of who did it. Of what they moved through the jungle while everyone else called it something noble." Claire held the lighter tighter, as if it could slip from her hand. "You said Unit 19 does not exist on paper," she said. Hawk's mouth twisted. "It exists in the scars," he replied. "It exists in men who cannot sleep." Claire's mind tried to put it into a shape she could chart. Military unit. Classified operation. Corruption. Betrayal. She had seen pieces of it in the world on news screens and in court cases. But the way Hawk spoke made it feel personal, close enough to smell. Claire glanced at the wound under the tape. "Someone shot you for this," she said. Hawk's gaze hardened. "Someone shot me to retrieve it," he said. "Someone who does not miss twice if he has time." Claire's pulse sped up. "Who?" she asked. Hawk stared at her for a long beat. "He does not use one name," Hawk said. "He uses whatever name fits the room. Badge names, company names, patriot names." Claire's fingers tightened around the Zippo. Give me the one you know. Hawk's lips pressed together. His throat worked as if the name hurt. Victor Hale, he said. The name did not ring a bell for Claire, and that in itself felt wrong. A man who could hunt like this, who could move through systems, should have been familiar. Or maybe he was familiar, just not to her. Defense consultant Hawk added. Private contractor, the kind who smiles for cameras and eats senators for breakfast. Claire stared at him. Why does he want you dead? Hawk's eyes flicked down to the lighter again. Because I am still breathing, he said. Claire's mouth went dry. What did you do, Hawk? Hawk's laugh was a rough exhale. We did what we were told, he said. We carried what they said was vital. We escorted assets. We guarded shipments through places where nobody wanted to admit we were. Claire kept her voice low. And then, Hawk's eyes narrowed. And then we realized we were being used, he said. We realized the cargo was not just weapons, not just intel. We realized men were getting rich while we got buried. Claire felt her stomach turn. Hawk continued, his voice quieter now, the fever making him slow. Hale was logistics then, he said. A suit in the field. A pen behind the blood. He figured out how to move product through conflict zones and how to make it disappear on paper. He used us like pack mules and called it patriotism. Claire's throat tightened. And when you found out, Hawk's gaze lifted to hers. His good eye looked wet again, but his face stayed hard. He jammed the comms, Hawk said. Left us in the trees. Said extraction was coming. Told us to hold. We held. Claire's fingers went cold. And it did not come, she whispered. Hawk shook his head once small. It came for him, he said. Not for us. It came for the paperwork. Claire's chest tightened so hard it hurt. How many survived? Hawk's jaw clenched. 4, he said. 4 out of 19. Claire's breath left her in a slow exhale. And my father, she said, Ironwood. Hawk's gaze softened for a fraction. Raymond was the first to suspect, he said. He tried to radio command. The line was dead. Hale made it dead. Raymond tried anyway. He never stopped trying. Claire felt tears sting behind her eyes and forced them down. Not here. Not now. Hawk shifted and winced. Pain flashed across his face. He is cleaning up, Hawk said. He has been cleaning up for years. Claire leaned in slightly. Cleaning up what? Hawk's eyes flicked to the door again. Witnesses, he said. Anyone who remembers. Anyone who kept something he did not want kept. Claire's stomach sank. You said he does not miss twice, she murmured. Hawk's gaze locked on hers. He already killed 2, Hawk said. 1 in Detroit. 1 in Miami. Quiet deaths. No headlines. A needle is a clean weapon in the right hands. Claire's blood turned colder. The way Hawk had reacted to the syringe came back with new meaning. Not just trauma. Not just fear of sleep. Fear of being killed in a hospital bed. Claire glanced at the IV line. A needle is how he does it, she said. Hawk nodded once. That is why I fought them, he murmured. Your doctor looks like one of his men. Not his face. His eyes. The way he stands like he owns the room. Claire's stomach tightened. She thought of Miles, his rigid posture, his need to control. She could see how Hawk's mind would connect it. Miles is not him, Claire said. Hawk did not argue. He looked exhausted, pulled thin by fever and pain. I know, he whispered, but my body does not know. Claire held the lighter with the card still inside and felt the weight of it settle into her bones. Why carry it alone, she asked. Why not give it to someone before now? Hawk's voice was thin. Because everyone can be bought, he said. And because carrying it alone kept it quiet. Claire stared at him. Then why are you here, she asked. Why a hospital? Hawk's eyes narrowed, then softened as if he was too tired to keep pretending. I was not coming here, he admitted. I was heading north. Canada. A border crossing. Somewhere with fewer cameras that talk to each other. Claire swallowed. And then, Hawk's hand pressed lightly against his abdomen, just above the taped pad. He caught up to me, Hawk said. In a rail yard. Rain like tonight. I felt the hit and kept moving because that is what you do when you do not want to die in place. Claire's pulse thudded. You lost him, she whispered. Hawk nodded once. For a few blocks, he said. Then the infection caught me and the blood loss did the rest. I went down in an alley. Someone called an ambulance. Claire felt the room narrow around her. Someone called, she repeated. Hawk's mouth twisted. I do not know who he said. It could have been a kid. Could have been a worker. Could have been someone who wanted me alive long enough to hand me over. Claire's skin prickled. Hawk's gaze locked on hers. That is why you cannot call the police, he said quietly. You call them, and you light a flare in the sky. Claire stared at the crack in the door. She could not see anything in the hall, but suddenly every sound felt sharper. The squeak of a cartwheel, the muffled voices at the nurse station, the distant ding of an elevator. Claire's throat tightened. I already lied in your chart, she said. Hawk's gaze softened in a way that looked almost like gratitude. Then you understand, he murmured. Claire looked down at the lighter. What do you want me to do with it? She asked. Hawk swallowed, eyes heavy. You take it, he said. You do not keep it in this building. You give it to people who cannot be bought by a local paycheck. Claire's lips pressed together. Journalists, she said. Hawk nodded slightly. Big ones, he said. National, the kind who publish first and ask questions later. Claire's mind flashed images of newsrooms' encrypted portals' headlines. It felt distant from this room, from her scrubs and taped bandages and the smell of infection. Claire looked at Hawk again. You are asking me to become a courier, she said. Hawk's voice was barely there. You already are, he replied. Claire's grip tightened. If I do this, she said, you stay alive. Hawk's mouth twisted. If I stay alive, he said, he comes faster. Claire stared at him. And if you die, she whispered. Hawk's gaze dropped. Then he comes anyway, he said. He just takes his time. Claire felt a cold anger rise under her ribs. Not loud, not dramatic. Quiet and hard. The kind that came when you realized the world did not reward the good and punish the evil the way it should. Claire set the lighter carefully into the pocket of her scrub top, deep enough that it would not fall out. Hawk watched her. Do not flash it, he murmured. Do not open it in public. Do not treat it like a trinket. Claire nodded once. I will keep it hidden, she said. Hawk's eyelids drooped. Then get me out, he whispered. Before the room changes again. Claire leaned in. Out of the hospital, she asked. Hawk did not answer immediately. He looked at the door again. His face tightened. Not the front way, he murmured. Claire exhaled slowly. We cannot move you like this, she said. You are septic. You are bleeding. Your gut wound is fresh. You could crash in a hallway. Hawk's mouth twisted. If I stay, he said, I crash anyway. Claire glanced at the monitor. The heart rate was creeping up again, subtle but real. Fear did that. Infection did that. Pain did that. Claire moved to check his abdomen pad again. She pressed lightly around it, watching his face. Hawk winced, but he did not pull away. The wound is bleeding slow, Claire said. Not pouring, but it is not safe. Hawk's eyes closed again. Nothing safe, he whispered. Claire looked at the clock. Her shift had hours left, but time was no longer measured in shift blocks. It was measured in footsteps and doors and who knew what. Claire turned toward the sink and washed her hands again, scrubbing as if she could scrub off the knowledge. The water ran hot. The soap smelled sharp. She dried her hands and reached for her phone in her pocket on instinct, then stopped. If she called anyone, if she texted, if she left a digital trail, she could be building a path for the wrong person. Claire slid the phone back without turning it on. She moved to the doorway and peered through the crack. The hall looked normal. Normal in an ICU at night meant dim lights, tired faces, the murmur of nurses charting. A security guard leaned near the nurse station, sipping coffee. Miles stood at the counter, arms crossed, eyes on the screens, looking like he was trying to pretend the last hour had not been madness. Claire stepped out just enough to catch Miles's attention. He looked up. Is he stable? Miles asked quietly. Claire kept her face neutral. More stable, she said. Antibiotics are running. Fever is still high. He needs imaging labs and a real assessment of that abdominal injury. Miles's brow furrowed. Abdominal injury, he repeated. It was charted as bruising. Claire held his gaze. It is not bruising, she said. Miles's posture stiffened. What is it? Claire felt her pulse thud. Saying it out loud in the open hall felt like speaking into a microphone. It is stitched, she said. Rough. Not done here. Miles stared at her for a long beat. You are telling me he has a penetrating wound, Miles said. Claire did not answer directly. I am telling you it is not from a fall, she said. Miles's face went pale. We have to report that, he said. Claire watched his eyes. She saw the doctor part of him, the protocol part, the part trained to cover the hospital's liability. Claire kept her voice low. If we report it to local police right now, she said, are you certain the first people who arrive will be the right ones? Miles's jaw tightened. That is not how this works, he said. But his voice lacked force. Claire leaned closer. Hawk believes he is being hunted, she said. He is terrified of needles for a reason that is not just trauma. I found something on him. Something he is guarding. He has a reason to believe someone will come for it. Miles stared at her, incredulous and angry. What did you find? He demanded. Claire did not answer. She did not trust the open hall. She did not trust the camera angles. She did not trust the quiet. Miles's eyes flicked to the security guard at the nurse station. The guard looked up briefly, then went back to his coffee. Miles lowered his voice. Claire, he said you cannot decide to hide a gunshot wound. You can lose your license. You can go to jail. Claire held his gaze. And if I report it and the wrong person walks into this hospital with a badge and a smile, she said, how many people do you think get hurt? Miles looked away, jaw clenched hard. Claire watched him wrestle with it. He was young, but he was not stupid. He had seen enough to know systems could fail. He had seen enough to know violence did not always come wearing a mask. Miles looked back at her. You should have told me immediately, he said. Claire nodded once. You would have called it in immediately, she replied. Miles's nostrils flared. He did not deny it. Claire continued. I need you to help me, Miles, she said. Not as the doctor in charge. As a person standing in a hallway who does not want this place turned into a crime scene. Miles's eyes narrowed. What are you asking? Claire kept her voice steady. Keep your staff calm, she said. Keep security close, but not aggressive. Do not call local police yet. Let me finish stabilizing him. Let me figure out who needs to be notified without lighting a flare. Miles stared at her. Feds, he said quietly. Claire did not answer. She did not know yet. She only knew the local path felt unsafe. Miles's jaw worked. Then he spoke like it cost him something. You have 30 minutes, he said. 30. Then I have to do something. Claire nodded once. It was not a victory. It was time. Claire turned back toward room 304. Behind her, the security guard at the station stood and stretched. He walked toward the lobby doors, then paused as if he heard something. Claire glanced back and saw the guard's face shift. His eyes moved to the elevators. Claire followed his gaze. The elevator at the end of the hall dinged softly, a small sound that still felt too loud. A man stepped out. He was dressed like money. Not flashy. Clean lines. Dark coat cut perfectly. Hair silver and neat. Glasses thin-rimmed catching the ceiling light. He held an umbrella closed at his side, rainwater dripping onto the tile. Two men followed behind him, large wearing black jackets with vague insignias that could have meant anything. The man did not look around like he was lost. He looked around like he was confirming he owned the room. He walked toward the nurse station with the calm of someone who did not fear being stopped. The guard near the station straightened and forced a smile that did not fit his face. Sir, visiting hours are over, the guard said. The man smiled polite in a way that felt practiced. I understand, he said. This is official business. He produced a laminated credential and placed it on the counter like a gift. The seal looked federal. The holographic strip caught light as he turned it slightly. It was the kind of badge that made tired people want to obey just to avoid embarrassment. The guard leaned closer. Miles shifted at the station, attention caught. Claire paused in the hallway, half turned toward her room, half frozen by the sight. The silver-haired man spoke softly, and yet his voice carried. We are tracking a dangerous individual, he said. A fugitive carrying a biological threat. We need to locate him immediately before he exposes your staff. The guard's face changed. Fear rose fast because fear always did when someone said biological. Claire felt her stomach drop. Hawk's words echoed. The man who makes badges look real. Miles frowned and stepped forward. Excuse me, he said. This is a restricted unit. Who are you? The man turned toward Miles with an expression that did not shift, as if he had been expecting a challenge. and had already decided how to handle it. Victor Hale, he said smoothly. Federal oversight. Departmental authority. Claire's pulse kicked harder. Hawk had said the name like it was a curse. Hale's gaze moved across the hallway and landed on Claire for a brief moment. It was not recognition. It was assessment. Then his eyes slid past her as if she were furniture. Miles's jaw tightened. If you are federal, Miles said you can show your paperwork to administration. You cannot just walk in here. Hale's smile stayed in place. Administration is being notified, Dr. Hale replied. Time is critical. Miles opened his mouth again, but one of Hale's men stepped closer, just a half step enough to change the room's temperature. The guard at the station swallowed. Sir, who are you looking for? The guard asked. Hale leaned in and lowered his voice, as if sharing something grave. Arthur Hale said, He is in critical condition. He is violent, delusional, and highly infectious. He believes he is a soldier. He believes he is being hunted. Claire's skin went cold. Hale said it like he was reading Hawk's mind from a file. The guard's eyes widened. We have a patient like that? The guard stammered. Room 304. Miles snapped. Do not say that Miles barked. The guard flinched. Hale's smile deepened slightly like a man watching a lock turn. Thank you, Hale said. You did the right thing. Claire's heart hammered. She looked at Miles. Miles's face had gone pale. He started to reach for the desk phone. Hale's man moved. Not fast enough to look like an attack. Just fast enough to stop the call. The phone line gave a dead click. Miles stared at it, then tried his own cell. No signal. The guard tried his confused. Nothing. Claire felt the air change. It was subtle, but it was real. The hospital's hum felt thinner, like someone had cut something vital. Hale's gaze moved to his men. Lock the exits, Hale said calmly. Keep the unit quiet. Miles stepped forward, anger rising. You cannot do this, he snapped. Hale looked at Miles like he was an inconvenience. Dr. Hale said you have a choice. Help us contain a threat or become part of it. Miles's fists clenched. Claire's mouth went dry. Hale's gaze shifted down the hall toward room 304, toward Claire's position. Then he began walking. His footsteps were unhurried. Clean shoes on tile. A man who did not need to run because the building was already being shaped around him. Claire backed toward her door without turning her back fully. Her hand found the handle. She slipped inside and closed it softly behind her, careful not to click the latch loudly. Hawk's right eye opened as soon as she entered. He had not been asleep. His gaze locked on her face, reading it like a map. He is here, Hawk said. Claire's throat tightened. Yes, she whispered. Hawk's jaw clenched. You have the lighter, he said. Claire touched her scrub pocket where the Zippo sat heavy against her chest. Yes. Hawk's breathing quickened. Hide it, he said. Hide it deep. Claire's mind raced. The room suddenly felt too small, too exposed. Cameras, monitors, doors. Claire looked around, searching for a place that was not obvious. Hawk's voice dropped lower. Not in a drawer, he whispered. Not in a bag. He will search those. Claire's hand went to the inside pocket of her scrub pants, the one that sat close to her hip, hidden beneath the fabric. She moved the lighter there, deeper, pressing it into place. The metal felt cold. Hawk watched her hands, then nodded once. Claire heard footsteps in the hall. Slow, deliberate. Not the soft shuffle of nurses. Not the squeak of rubber soles. Harder steps. Ownership. Claire's pulse pounded. Hawk's gaze shifted to the door. His body tensed like a wire pulled tight, even in weakness. Claire stepped closer and lowered her voice. Do not fight him here, she whispered. Hawk's mouth twisted. If I do not fight, he said, he takes it and I die anyway. Claire's throat tightened. You are not dying tonight, she said. Hawk looked at her for a long beat, then spoke in a voice that sounded older than his fever. Then we do not let him into this room, he said. Claire's hand moved to the chair near the wall. It was heavy upholstered, meant for family members who waited during bad nights. She dragged it toward the door and wedged it beneath the handle. The chair looked small against the idea of what was coming, but it was something. Hawk's breathing grew rough. Pain and adrenaline were mixing again. Claire turned back to the bed and checked the IV. The antibiotic was still running. The line held. She reached for the oxygen tubing and moved it closer, then stopped, remembering Hawk's fear of being restrained, of being handled. She kept her movements minimal, controlled. Footsteps in the hall reached the nurse station, voices low and tense. Then the doorknob of room 304 jiggled gently as if the person on the other side was polite enough to knock without knocking. Claire's spine stayed stiffened. Hawk's fingers curled into the sheets. The knob jiggled again, then stopped. A voice came through the door, smooth as glass. "Nurse Claire Monroe," it said. "Open the door." Claire did not answer. Her mouth felt dry, her heart hammered. The voice continued, still calm, still polite. "We are here to transport the patient," it said. "This is a federal matter." Hawk's jaw clenched so hard his cheek muscles jumped. "Do not open," he mouthed silently. Claire's gaze flicked to the chair jammed under the handle, then to the thin wood of the door, then to Hawk's taped abdomen under the gown. Claire heard a soft scrape in the hall metal on metal, like someone sliding something out of a pocket. Her breath caught. The chair trembled slightly as pressure tested the door. Claire stepped closer to Hawk's bed and kept her voice low. "I need you steady," she whispered. "Look at me." Hawk's good eye snapped to hers. Claire held his gaze, anchoring him the way she had before, as if her eyes could keep him from falling back into the jungle in his head. "In through your nose," she murmured. "Hold. Out." Hawk's breath shuddered, then followed. Claire's hand hovered near the call button on the wall, then stopped. If the lines were dead, if the building had been jammed, the button might be nothing more than plastic. The doorknob turned again, slower this time. Claire did not move away from Hawk's side. Hawk's fingers dug into the sheets. His voice came out in a whisper that sounded like steel. "Permission to engage," he murmured. Claire's throat tightened. "No," she whispered back. The pressure on the door increased. The chair shifted a fraction. Wood creaked. Claire's eyes stayed on Hawk's face as the room held its breath. Then the chair stopped moving, as if whoever was outside had decided the quiet approach was finished. The chair shuddered again, harder this time. Wood groaned. The door frame answered with a thin, cracking sound that made Claire's teeth tighten. Hawk's good eye stayed locked on the handle. His fever shake had returned, but his hands were steady, now the steadiness of a man who had learned to function while his body screamed. He inhaled through his nose and held the breath like a trigger discipline. When he exhaled, it was controlled, almost quiet. Claire kept her stance close to the bed, not between him and the door, like a shield, but near enough that he could see her face without turning his head. She wanted his focus here, not drifting back into a jungle of memory. The doorknob turned again. The chair scraped. The door flexed inward, then settled. A pause. Then a voice, still smooth, still polite. "Nurse Monroe, Victor Hale," said from the other side. "You are obstructing a federal operation. Open the door." Claire did not answer. The voice continued calm as a man ordering coffee. "Your physician is with me. Dr. Carter will confirm the transfer." Claire's eyes flicked toward Hawk. Hawk's jaw tightened. His gaze did not waver. Claire took one small step toward the door, then stopped. She did not want to look through the crack and give Hale the satisfaction of knowing he had moved her. She kept her voice low so it stayed inside the room. "Miles is not with you," she whispered to Hawk. Hawk's mouth barely moved when he answered. "He will be," he murmured. The chair shifted again. Not a shove this time. A test. The handle rattled with a new sound metal clicking in a way Claire recognized from locked supply rooms. Someone had a key. Or a tool. Claire's pulse kicked harder. The lock turned. The chair held for half a second, then slid with a scraping screech across the tile. The door swung inward. 3 figures filled the doorway before Claire's brain could name them. Black jackets. Broad shoulders. Faces blank in the way men's faces got when they were paid to make violence feel routine. Their eyes swept the room and landed on the bed. Victor Hale stepped in behind them like he owned the air. He wore his calm like armor. His glasses caught the soft lamplight and hid his eyes until he tilted his head. His gaze found Claire. "Nurse Monroe," he said, as if they were meeting at a fundraiser. "Thank you for keeping him stable for transport." Claire stood very still. Her hands were empty. Her posture looked calm. Inside her chest, her heart hit the ribs like it wanted out. "This is an ICU," Claire said. "You cannot transport a septic patient without a receiving physician and a medical plan." Hale's smile did not change. "We have a plan," he replied. "Step aside." Hawk's voice cut through low and hard. "No." Hale's eyes shifted to the bed. He looked at Hawk as if Hawk were not a person, but an item that had been mislabeled. Arthur Hale said softly, "You are ill. You are confused. You are putting people at risk." Hawk's good eye narrowed. "Do not call me that," Hawk said. Hale's smile deepened by a fraction. "Frank Dalton, then," Hale replied. "Or whatever name you wear this week." Claire felt her skin go cold. Hale said it like he had been flipping through Hawk's identities for years. One of Hale's men moved toward the bed. Hawk's shoulders tightened. His hands clenched into the sheets. Claire saw the moment the room tried to become a battlefield again. Claire stepped forward one pace, not aggressive, just enough to be seen. "He is consenting to treatment," she said. "He is not a threat right now." Hale's gaze slid back to Claire. The politeness remained, but the warmth was gone. "You are not in command here, nurse," he said. Claire's mouth went dry. "And you are not law enforcement," she said. "You are not hospital administration. You have no authority to override medical ethics." Hale's eyes flicked toward the IV line. "Ethics," he repeated, as if tasting a word he found amusing. "Ethics do not stop outbreaks." Claire's stomach tightened. "There is no outbreak," she said. "He has sepsis, not hemorrhagic fever. You know that." Hale's gaze sharpened. The smile stayed. "I know what I need to know," he said. "Step away." Claire did not move. Hawk's voice came again, quieter, now more dangerous for its calm. "The nurse is designated medical," Hawk said. "She is the only one who touches me." Hale finally looked amused. He took a slow step closer, stopping just inside the room, careful not to cross the line Hawk had set as if it mattered to him. "That is a sweet delusion," Hale said. "Like the rest of your little mythology." Hawk's breathing held steady. "Not a delusion," Hawk said. "A rule." Hale's head tilted slightly. "And what happens if I break your rule?" Hale asked. Hawk's eyes did not blink. "Then you learn what you bought," Hawk replied. One of Hale's men laughed under his breath, a short sound. Another man's hand moved behind a sheet toward his jacket. Claire saw the movement and felt her own body react, a surge of adrenaline that made the room sharpen at the edges. Hale lifted a hand without looking. The laugh stopped. The hand paused. Hale's control was quiet. That was what made it frightening. He looked at Claire again. "Where is it?" Hale asked. Claire held his gaze. She did not ask what. She knew. "I do not know what you mean," she said. Hale's smile thinned. "You do," he replied. "The little piece of plastic he carries like a rosary. The thing he thinks will save him. The thing that will get you killed if you keep lying for him." Claire felt the Zippo's weight against her hip, like a bruise. She kept her face smooth. "You are trespassing," she said. "Leave my patient alone." Hale sighed, the sound of a man bored with delays. "Dr. Carter," Hale said, "come in." Claire's chest tightened. A moment later, Miles Carter stumbled into view, pushed from the hallway by one of Hale's men. His hair was disheveled. His glasses were crooked. His face was pale with anger and something worse. Miles's eyes snapped to Claire. "Claire," he said, "what the hell is this?" Hale spoke over him. Dr. Hale said, "Confirm the patient's condition." Miles stared at Hale, then at the badge on Hale's chest, then back to Claire like he was trying to decide whether he was watching a prank or an invasion. "This is an ICU," Miles said. "You cannot just walk in here. Who are you?" Hale's smile returned. "Victor Hale," Hale said. "Federal oversight." Miles's jaw clenched. "There is no such office with this authority," Miles snapped. "You have no warrant. You have no hospital approval. You have no right." One of Hale's men stepped behind Miles and pressed a hand lightly to the back of his neck, not choking, not dramatic, just enough to remind him how fragile rules were without force. Miles flinched. Anger flashed in his eyes. "Get your hands off me," Miles said. Hale's voice stayed calm. "Dr. Hale said the patient is carrying a biological threat. We are extracting him for containment." Miles turned sharply to Claire. "That is a lie," Miles said. "He is septic." Hale watched Miles like a man watching a dog bark behind a fence. "Dr. Hale said you may either cooperate, or you may be removed from duty for interfering with national security." Miles's nostrils flared. He looked at Claire again, and in his eyes, Claire saw the exact moment he realized the phone lines were dead for a reason. Miles's voice lowered. "Claire," he said, "how did they get in here?" Claire did not answer. She could not. Hawk's gaze had stayed on Hale the whole time. Now Hawk spoke quiet and cutting. He is the one, Hawk said. Hale's smile widened, almost pleased. The fever is making you theatrical, Hale replied. That is expected. Hawk's hands tightened on the sheets. You hunted us, Hawk said. You cleaned your hands with paperwork and called it patriotism. Hale looked at him, and the smile finally left his face. You are not well, Frank, he said. You are confused. You are dangerous. Hawk's laugh was a dry exhale. You have been calling men dangerous your whole life, Hawk said. That is how you justify killing them. Hale's gaze flicked to Claire again. Nurse Hale said, last chance. Give me the item. Step away from the bed. You walk out of this hospital alive. Claire felt her mouth go dry. She could hear her own pulse in her ears. She could smell antiseptic and rain and infection and something else now, something metallic and sharp. She did not move. Hale nodded once, as if confirming a choice he expected. All right, he said. He gestured slightly. One of his men moved to the IV pump. Claire's voice snapped sharp. Do not touch that, she said. The man paused, then kept moving. Claire stepped toward him, hands up. Stop, Claire said. The man's shoulder turned toward her like a wall. Hawk's body tensed, but he did not lunge. He did not waste movement. He spoke instead, and his voice changed the room. Stand down, he said. The words landed like a weight. Even Miles seemed to freeze for half a beat, eyes flicking toward Hawk as if hearing something older than the hospital. Hale smiled again, thin and controlled. That voice, he said. Always the voice. Hale's gaze slid toward the door. He did not raise his voice. Bring in the restraints, Hale said. Claire's stomach dropped. Hawk's good eye flashed to Claire. Claire read the message in his face. If they put hands on him, the room would explode into violence again. If they forced him down, his heart might not tolerate it. If they sedated him, he would not just lose consciousness. He would lose control. Claire's hand moved to the call button again by instinct, then stopped. The line was dead. The building was jammed. The hospital was now a box. Miles's voice rose furious. You cannot restrain a patient for your convenience, he snapped. You cannot do this. Hale turned to him, and for the first time, his tone carried a hint of impatience. Dr. Hale said you are exhausting. He nodded once. One of Hale's men moved behind Miles. There was a quick motion, a soft thump. Miles's knees buckled. Claire gasped. Miles hit the tile on his side, eyes rolling, breath shallow. He was not dead. He looked sedated, taken out of the room like an object. Claire's throat tightened with rage. Hale did not look at Miles again. Now Hale said we handle the patient. Hawk's breathing remained controlled, but Claire saw the tremor in his hands return the fever, mixing with fear. Claire stepped closer to Hawk, voice low. Look at me, she whispered. Hawk's eye snapped to hers. Claire's hand hovered near the bed rail. You cannot fight them all here, she whispered. Hawk's jaw clenched. Then we do not wait, he murmured. Claire's pulse kicked. What she whispered. Hawk's gaze flicked to the door, then to Hale, then back to Claire. We break contact, Hawk said so softly only she could hear. Claire swallowed. Her mind raced through hallways and stairwells and locked doors and cameras. She thought of patients down the corridor on ventilators, nurses in rooms with no idea. She thought of what a firefight in an ICU would mean. Claire looked at Hale's men. Their hands were ready. Their faces were blank. They were not here to negotiate. Claire looked at Hawk. He was dying. Fever and infection and blood loss. But his eye held a cold clarity. He had already decided what he was willing to die for. Hale stepped closer. Move away, Nurse Hale said. You have been useful. Do not become collateral. Claire felt the Zippo against her hip again. She thought of the card inside, the names, the places, the proof. She thought of her father in the basement, the lights off, whispering words like a prayer. Claire's voice steadied. No, she said. Hale's gaze hardened. Then you will be removed, he said. One of Hale's men reached for Claire's arm. Hawk moved. It was not a wild swing. It was a short, efficient motion from a body that had been trained to spend nothing and still win something. Hawk's hand snapped out and struck the man's wrist with the heel of his palm. The man's fingers opened. Whatever he had been holding clattered to the floor. The room snapped into motion. Hale's other man surged forward. Claire's body reacted before her brain caught up. She ducked back toward the bed as the man's shoulder clipped her. She stumbled, caught herself on the bed rail. Hawk's voice cut through loud now. Down, Claire. Claire dropped instinctively, collapsing to the tile beside the bed as if taking cover. Hawk did not charge. He grabbed the IV pole with one hand, yanked it free from its spot, and swung it outward. Not at a face, at the space between bodies, a blunt barrier that forced distance. Metal rang as the pole struck the doorframe and bounced. Hale stepped back smoothly, not startled, just annoyed. Enough, Hale said. His hand moved inside his coat. Claire's breath caught. She did not see the weapon clearly, but she saw the intent in Hale's posture, the way his shoulder settled. Hawk's good eye locked on it. Claire heard Hawk's breathing steady as a metronome. Hawk kicked the IV pole outward hard. The pole slid across the tile, faster than it should have, rolling and skidding into the hallway with a harsh metallic scrape that drew every eye toward it. Hale's men flinched. Claire used the moment. She scrambled on hands and knees toward the wall-mounted fire alarm box in the hall, just outside the room. Her scrubs scraped the tile. Her palms stung. A hand grabbed the back of her shirt and yanked. Claire cried out, but the sound was swallowed by the rush of blood in her ears. Hawk's voice roared. Let her go. Claire's body snapped backward, shoulders jerking. She saw the man above her face, blank fingers tightening. Then something heavy crashed into him. The plastic water pitcher, thrown with startling accuracy, shattered against the man's face. Water exploded across the hall. The man recoiled, swearing, hands flying up. Claire lunged forward. Her hand slammed down on the fire alarm handle. The alarm shrieked. Strobes erupted, flashing white, then red, then white again. The hall turned into a pulsing nightmare. Doors cracked open up and down the corridor. Voices rose in confusion and fear. Code Gray, a voice shouted somewhere. What is happening? Hale's head turned slightly, eyes narrowing, as if he were irritated by noise. Kill the alarm, he snapped. His men moved, but the strobe lights and the sudden chaos changed the corridor. Nurses spilled out, then froze at the sight of Hale's men. A security guard started forward, then stopped when one of Hale's men lifted a hand, and the guard saw something in it that made him back away. Claire pushed herself upright, chest heaving. Hawk had dragged himself out of bed. His hospital gown hung from him like a flag. The antibiotic line trailed the IV pump, beeping in protest. Blood stained the tape at his abdomen. He looked like he should have collapsed. Instead, he stood like a man holding a line. Claire rushed to him, wrapping an arm around his back. You are not walking, she hissed. Hawk's voice was low in her ear. Stairs, he rasped, not the elevator. Claire glanced down the hall. The strobe lights made Hale's face flicker in and out of clarity. His calm remained, but his eyes had sharpened into something colder. Hale lifted his hand again. Claire did not wait to see what came next. She pulled Hawk toward the stairwell door, half dragging, half supporting. Hawk's weight felt heavier than it should have, dead weight tugging her shoulder down. His breath was hot against her neck. He smelled like fever and rain and old smoke. Behind them, boots thudded. Hale's voice rose crisp and controlled. Stop them! Claire shoved through the stairwell door with her shoulder. The stairwell was concrete and echo. The alarm's shriek bounced off the walls, making it hard to tell where footsteps came from. The air smelled damp, like old bleach and metal. Claire's shoes slipped slightly on the first step. She tightened her grip around Hawk. Hawk's hand clutched the railing. His knuckles were white. He stumbled, caught himself, then forced another step down. Every movement cost him. Claire could feel it, the way his body shook, the way pain pulled at him like hooks. The infection was still in his blood. The wound still bled. The adrenaline was a temporary scaffolding. Claire kept moving. Behind them, the stairwell door slammed open. Boots. Fast. Claire's pulse spiked. She glanced back. A man in black jacket, flashlight in hand, eyes scanning. He started down after them without hesitation. Claire pulled Hawk harder. Move, she whispered. Hawk's breath came out in a harsh rasp. I am moving, he growled. They reached the next landing. Hawk sagged for half a beat. Leave me, Hawk wheezed. Claire tightened her grip. No. Hawk's eye flashed to hers. The old command voice tried to form, but pain broke it. You cannot carry me, he rasped. Claire's voice sharpened, angry and trembling. "Shut up," she snapped. "You are not dying in a stairwell." Hawk let out a breath that might have been a laugh if it had not carried so much strain. "You sound like him," he said. Claire did not answer. She shoved them onward. The boots behind them closed distance. Claire saw a metal door on the next landing labeled "Authorized Personnel Only." She shoved it open with her shoulder. They spilled into a service corridor dimmer, quieter away from patient rooms. Pipes ran along the ceiling. The air was cooler. The smell shifted from antiseptic to industrial dust. A rolling cart sat abandoned against the wall. Claire yanked it sideways into the corridor behind them. The wheels squealed and she shoved it hard until it wedged at an angle. Hawk leaned against the wall, chest heaving. Claire grabbed his face gently, forcing his eye to meet hers. "Breathe," she whispered. Hawk inhaled, exhaled. His tremor eased a fraction. Claire heard the door at the end of the corridor slam open. Hale's men. Claire's mind snapped into a cold clarity. Basement, she thought. Service levels, utility spaces. She grabbed Hawk's arm and moved again, dragging him toward a stairwell that led down. Signs pointed to mechanical. Hawk's feet scraped. He stumbled, then forced himself up. Claire shoved the stairwell door open and started down. The air got colder with each step. The alarm noise faded above them. Down here, the building felt older, heavier, like the hospital's bones. At the bottom, the door opened into a wide mechanical space. Boilers, thick pipes, concrete floors damp with condensation. The hum of equipment low and constant. A smell of hot metal and water. And near the far wall, a fenced storage area with tall cylinders chained in place. Hawk's gaze went there instantly. Claire saw the calculation in his eye and felt her stomach tighten. "No," she whispered. Hawk's voice was low. "Fire is honest," he rasped. Claire shook her head, breath coming fast. "Do not," she whispered. Hawk's jaw clenched. "He will not stop," Hawk said. "He will take it. He will take you with it." Claire's hand moved instinctively to her hip pocket, feeling the Zippo's hard shape. Her throat tightened. Hawk leaned against the chain fence, coughing. The cough tore through him. He spat into his sleeve. When he lowered it, there was more pink. Claire's hands shook as she tried to steady him. Hawk's fingers gripped her wrist, weak but urgent. "Listen," he said. Claire leaned in. Hawk's breath was hot, feverish. "You keep it safe," he whispered. "You do not let it die in this building." Claire's eyes burned. She blinked hard. "Come with me," she whispered. Hawk's gaze held hers. "I cannot," he said quietly. Claire shook her head. "You can," she insisted. Hawk's mouth twisted. "You have not been shot, and poisoned, and running for years," he said. "You have not been carrying dead men's names in your pocket." Claire's breath hitched. "Then let me carry you," she whispered. Hawk's good eye softened for a fraction. Then it hardened again like a door closing. "Claire," he said with sudden firmness. The use of her name made her freeze. Hawk pressed the Zippo into her hand, forcing it into her grip. "Take it," he said. Claire held it, the metal cold against her palm. Hawk's eyes flicked toward a low hatch near the boiler line, a maintenance access panel half hidden behind piping. "There," he said. "Crawl space. It runs out to storm drains." Claire turned her head and saw it. Small, dark, smelling faintly of damp earth. Footsteps echoed in the stairwell behind them. Hale's men had found the basement. Claire's pulse hammered. Hawk's grip tightened on her wrist. "Go," he said. Claire stared at him. "No." Hawk's voice rose sharper, the command voice cutting through fever and pain. "Go." Claire's throat tightened. She looked at his face, at the sweat shining on his brow, at the blood seeping through tape. She saw the old soldier in him, not as a myth, but as a man using the last of his strength to hold something back. Claire shook her head, tears stinging. "I am not leaving you," she whispered. Hawk leaned closer, and his voice dropped into something softer, almost gentle. "If you stay," he said. "The truth stays here. It burns with me." Claire's breath broke. Boots hit the concrete floor. Flashlights swept the room in harsh beams. A voice called out, calm and carrying. Frank Hale said, "End of the line." Hawk straightened. He pushed away from the fence with effort. He stood tall for a second, taller than his frail body should allow. Claire saw him become something else in that posture. Not invincible, not young, just resolved. Hale stepped into view, unhurried handkerchief held near his mouth as if the basement air offended him. Two men spread out behind him, weapons low, but ready. Hale's gaze found Hawk, then Claire. "There you are," he said. Claire felt her own body freeze, but Hawk did not. Hawk's good eye locked on Hale. "You always talk like you are saving someone," Hawk said. Hale smiled faintly. "I am saving this country from contagion," Hale replied. "Hand over the item, Frank. You can die in a clean bed instead of on concrete." Hawk's laugh was a rough exhale. "You do not get to decide where I die," Hawk said. Hale's eyes narrowed. "You are not in control," Hale said. "You never were." Hawk's gaze flicked to Claire. Now he said barely audible. Claire stared at him confused for half a beat. Hawk's eyes moved toward the hatch again. Claire understood. Her breath caught. Her chest tightened with panic and grief. Hawk's voice returned stronger. "Go," he said. Claire's eyes filled. She did not move. Hawk's jaw clenched. "That is a direct order, Nurse Monroe," he said. The old title, the command tone, the structure of a unit that lived in his bones. Claire's throat tightened so hard it hurt. Hale's gaze sharpened. "How touching," Hale murmured. One of Hale's men stepped forward. Hawk's shoulders tightened. Claire moved. She ran to the hatch, dropping to her knees on the cold concrete. The metal ring was stiff, rusted. Her fingers slipped. Behind her, she heard Hawk's voice, calm and hard. "Unit 19, he said, like he was speaking into a radio. "Perimeter engaged." Hale's voice cut back. "Take him." Boots moved fast. A flashlight beam swept across Claire's back. Her fingers found the ring again. She pulled with everything she had, shoulders burning. The hatch scraped, then lifted just enough for a sliver of black to open beneath it. Damp air rose. The smell of earth and sewage hit her face. Claire swallowed back nausea and pulled again. The hatch opened wider. She glanced back over her shoulder. Hawk stood between Hale and the hatch hospital gown, clinging to his frame, blood dark against the fabric. In his hand, he held a length of metal he had found near the boiler, a pry bar, heavy and blunt. He looked like he could barely stand. And still he did not step aside. Hale's eyes fixed on the pry bar. "Put it down," Hale said, voice flat. Hawk smiled, a thin, blood-stained curve that held no humor. "Broken arrow," Hawk whispered. He did not swing at Hale's men. Not yet. Hale's gaze flicked to Claire at the hatch. "Stop her," Hale said. A man surged toward Claire. Claire dropped into the opening, twisting her body sideways, scrubs, scraping the metal rim. The Zippo pressed hard against her hip. She clutched it with one hand as she slid down. A hand grabbed for her ankle. Claire kicked heel, catching the man's wrist. The grip loosened. She pulled herself deeper into the crawl space, elbows sliding on slick concrete. Above her, voices rose. Boots scraped. The clang of metal rang out. Hale's voice sharp now. "No." Claire flinched at the sudden change in his tone. The calm had cracked. Hawk's voice rose strong and fierce in the basement's echo. "Tell the world, Claire," he shouted. "Tell them we existed." Claire's breath broke into a sob she could not afford. She shoved herself forward into the tunnel. The hatch above her slammed. Darkness swallowed the basement sounds for half a beat, then they came through muffled, heavy. The tunnel was narrow, concrete on both sides. Cold water pooled along the bottom, soaking her knees and hands as she crawled. The air was thick with damp and rot. Her flashlight was still clipped to her badge reel, but she did not turn it on yet. Light could be seen. Light could be followed. Above, the basement erupted into noise. A sharp metallic crack, like something striking something it should not. A flare of white light seeped through the seams around the hatch for a split second. Then a concussive thump rolled through the concrete like a fist in the earth. Claire froze, heart hammering. Dust sifted down into the tunnel. Rust flakes rained onto her hair and shoulders. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Another thump, smaller. Then a roar, not a movie roar, but a deep, rushing sound like fire finding air. Claire squeezed her eyes shut. The world above her seemed to breathe once hard. Then the sounds changed. Shouts turned into choking coughs. Boots turned frantic. A man screamed. Another voice shouted Hale's name. Claire's chest heaved. She forced herself forward, crawling elbows, sliding through slime knees, scraping raw against concrete. Tears blurred her vision. She wiped them with the back of her wrist and tasted salt and grime. Her mind tried to drag her backward to the image of Hawk standing in the strobe lights upstairs, to his eye locking on hers, to his voice saying go. Claire kept crawling. The tunnel bent slightly, then dipped. Cold water rose higher, soaking her scrubs to the waist. Rats skittered somewhere ahead, claws clicking in the dark. Claire bit back a cry and kept moving, hands, numb shoulders burning. She finally turned on her tiny flashlight. The beam was weak, a small circle of light swallowed by the tunnel's black. But it gave her direction. It showed her the slick concrete, the pooled water, the smear of rust. Her breath came fast. She forced it slow. In through the nose. Hold. Out. She crawled until her arms shook. The tunnel seemed endless, but then ahead she saw a faint change. A sliver of gray that did not belong to darkness. Moonlight. Claire's breath hitched. She crawled faster, the Zippo pressing into her hip like a reminder of why she was moving. At the end of the tunnel, a grated exit blocked the opening. Rusted bars. Bolts thick with corrosion. Claire grabbed the grate and pulled. It did not budge. Panic surged. Her chest tightened, her mouth went dry. She pulled again harder. The grate groaned but stayed fixed. Claire clenched her jaw and shoved her shoulder against it once, twice. On the third shove, something gave. The hinge creaked. Rust snapped. The grate shifted outward. Cold air rushed in fresh compared to the tunnel's rot. Claire sucked in a breath that felt like the first real air in an hour. She shoved the grate wider and hauled herself up and out. Rain hit her face immediately, cold and sharp. She rolled onto wet asphalt in a narrow alley behind a line of dumpsters. The city's distant noise washed over her, traffic and sirens far away like another world. Claire lay there for a second, chest-heaving rain flattening her hair against her forehead. Her hands shook. She reached for her hip pocket and touched the Zippo. It was still there. Claire pushed herself up to her knees. Her scrubs were soaked and filthy. Her elbows were scraped raw. Her nails were packed with black grime. She looked toward the hospital skyline, its lights still bright above the trees and buildings. Then she remembered the lights had gone out down below. The thump. The roar. Claire's throat tightened. She stood unsteady and forced her feet to move. She walked out of the alley, keeping to shadows, rain washing slime from her skin as she moved into the city. Her mind tried to split in two. One half still in the basement hearing Hawk's voice. The other half in the present calculating streets and cameras and the distance to places that stayed open all night. She found a corner store with bright windows and a bored clerk behind bulletproof glass. She did not go in. Too many cameras. Too much light. She kept moving. She found an all-night laundromat with humming machines and one tired woman folding clothes, eyes down. Claire walked past it. Too many mirrors. Too many reflections. Finally, she found what she needed, not comfort, just anonymity. A small internet cafe tucked between a closed bar and a pawn shop, its sign buzzing weakly in the rain. Inside, a teenage clerk looked up, eyes widening at the sight of her soaked scrubs and filthy face. Claire reached into her pocket and pulled out cash with shaking fingers. She placed it on the counter without counting. "Private booth," she said. The clerk swallowed and nodded, glancing toward the door as if expecting someone to follow her in. Claire stepped into the back, into a booth with a cracked screen and a cheap keyboard that smelled faintly of disinfectant. Her hands trembled so hard she could barely sit. She pulled the Zippo out and stared at it for a second. The metal looked ordinary, scratched, denting at the edges, a thing that could belong to any man. Claire's throat tightened as she remembered Hawk's face, the way he had looked illuminated by dying sparks. Tell the world, he had said. Claire swallowed and forced her hands steady. She popped the bottom plate free and removed the small card. The plastic felt too light for what it carried. She slid it into the reader. The screen flickered. A folder opened. Names, files, scanned documents. Documents. Claire's breath caught. She did not read everything. Not yet. She did not have time to drown in detail. She needed to move the truth out of her hands and into places Hale could not erase with a quiet phone call. Her fingers found a browser. She typed with trembling precision. She searched for secure submission portals, the kind investigative desks used for tips. She found encrypted drop boxes with simple instructions and cold disclaimers. Claire attached files. A progress bar appeared. It crawled forward slow and steady. Outside the booth, rain hit the window. A car drove past headlights, sliding across the wall for a second. Claire froze, then forced herself to breathe. The progress bar moved again. She opened another portal, another upload, another progress bar. Her mouth went dry. She licked her lips and tasted grime. The files moved into the world in small increments. The bar climbed. Claire's mind flashed to the hospital again, to Miles on the tile. Eyes rolled back, breath shallow. To nurses in hallways under strobes. To Hale's calm voice saying, "Take him." Claire's hands shook harder. The bar climbed. Her phone sat in her pocket, turned off. She did not touch it. The bar climbed again. At last, one upload completed. Claire started another. She did not stop. When the final progress bar reached the end, Claire pulled the card out and stared at it for a beat. Her breath came in shallow pulls. Her shoulders ached. Her fingers were numb. She snapped the card in half with both hands. The plastic cracked. Then she snapped it again. Pieces fell into her palm. Claire stared at them as if they were teeth. She gathered the pieces and dropped them into a trash bin beside the booth. She pushed them down under paper cups and wrappers. She sat back for a moment, eyes closed, rain sound muffled behind the walls. Then she opened her eyes and stood. She walked out of the booth and into the main room of the cafe. The teenage clerk looked up again. His eyes flicked to her scrubs and the dried bloodstains that rain had not fully washed out. Claire did not speak. She moved toward the door. The clerk swallowed. "Ma'am," he started. Claire paused and turned her head slightly. "If anyone asks," she said, "you never saw me." The clerk nodded quickly. Claire stepped out into the rain. The city air felt colder now, but it was clean compared to the tunnel. Claire walked with her head down, hood pulled up from a sweatshirt she had bought with the last of her cash at a gas station on the way. She kept to streets with fewer lights and fewer cameras. She did not go home. She did not go back to the hospital. She found a public phone outside a closed diner and stared at it for a long moment, rain running down her face. Her hands shook. She lifted the receiver. Her voice came out steady only because she forced it. "FBI field office," she said into the line when someone answered. "Cleveland." There was a pause, then a voice. "Ma'am, this is a federal line. State your emergency." Claire swallowed. "My name is Claire Monroe," she said. "I am reporting evidence tied to Victor Hale and an unauthorized operation involving a unit that never existed. There has been violence at Lakeview Regional Medical Center." The voice on the line sharpened. "Ma'am, where are you right now?" Claire's throat tightened. "Not safe," she said. "Stay on the line," the operator said. Claire's gaze flicked down the street. A car idled at the corner, headlights dim. It could have been anyone. It could have been nothing. Claire's heart hammered. "You will trace this call," Claire said quietly. "That is fine. The files are already out." "Ma'am," the operator began. Claire hung up. She stood there for a beat, rain washing over her, then she turned and walked away. 2 days later, Claire sat in an airport terminal with a new haircut and hair dye still faintly staining the skin near her scalp. A gray hoodie hung loose on her shoulders. Oversized sunglasses hid her eyes. She had a small bag at her feet with clothes bought in cash. Television screens above the gate flashed news graphics in bright colors that did not match the heaviness in her chest. A headline scrolled. A man in handcuffs appeared on the screen. Victor Hale. His suit was still expensive, but his calm was gone. His hair was disheveled. His glasses were missing. He shouted at cameras, jaw clenched, face red with rage. Agents guided him into a vehicle without looking at him like he mattered. Claire watched without smiling. She felt no triumph, only a strange emptiness where fear had been living. On another screen, a different headline mentioned a fire at Lakeview Regional. Emergency response. Investigation ongoing. Officials stated no patients in the main wards were harmed. Claire's throat tightened. They showed a blurred still image from a security camera, a frail man in a hospital gown, moving through a hallway under flashing lights. Hawk. Claire's breath caught. She looked away, then forced herself to look back. Her hand slid into her pocket and touched the Zippo. The metal was warmer now, warmed by her body. She pulled it out and flipped it open. The flint had been replaced. The fuel had been replaced. She did not remember buying it. She only remembered standing in a gas station aisle staring at lighters with shaking hands until the clerk asked if she needed help. Claire spun the wheel. A steady flame appeared. She stared at it, letting it reflect in her sunglasses. Her lips moved in a whisper the terminal noise could not swallow. "Perimeter clear, Sergeant," she said. She snapped it shut. The click sounded final. Claire picked up her bag, stood, and moved toward the gate as boarding began blending into the crowd, like any other traveler, except for the weight she carried that no suitcase could hold. Claire moved with the boarding line as if she belonged there, one more traveler with a hoodie and a bag that held nothing worth stealing. The airport smelled like coffee and floor polish. The televisions overhead kept talking in bright, confident voices, but the sound did not reach her the way it reached everyone else. Her ears still held the basement, the hiss of gas, the sharp crack of metal on metal, the thump that turned the world into dust and silence. At the gate, an attendant scanned her boarding pass without looking up. Claire kept her shoulders loose, kept her breathing steady, kept her eyes down. When she stepped onto the jet bridge, the air changed warmer and stale, the smell of recycled oxygen and old carpet. She walked to her seat and sat by the window. Outside Cleveland was a smear of gray beneath low clouds. The runway lights shimmered on wet pavement. Rain softened everything as if the city were trying to blur its own edges. Claire rested her hands on her thighs and made them stop shaking. In through the nose. Hold. Out. The engines spooled. The plane trembled, then surged forward. The acceleration pushed her back into the seat, and for a second, the pressure felt like hands on her shoulders, the kind of hands Hawk would have fought. Her jaw tightened. She watched the runway drop away. The city slid under the wing, then fell behind clouds, and the world became white. Only then did she let herself close her eyes. She did not sleep. The thought of sleep still carried his fear, the way he had set it like a trap. She sat with her head back, listening to the small human sounds around her, the rustle of magazines, the click of seatbelts, the muted conversation that carried no threat. Her mind kept returning to the moment in the basement when he had straightened his spine and planted his feet like he could hold back a tide by will alone. "Tell the world, Claire." She opened her eyes again and stared at the seat back in front of her until the letters and ads blurred. When the flight attendants came by with drinks, Claire shook her head. When the seatbelt light chimed off, she did not move. She kept her body small, contained, like she was trying to take up less space in the world. Her pocket held the Zippo cold metal against her thigh. She had replaced the flint. She had filled it. She had given it fire again. The flame had looked steady, and the steadiness had felt like a lie she needed. Hours later, the plane descended through sunlight. The clouds broke, and the ground rose up in clean, bright shapes, dry highways, beige rooftops, a different kind of city. Claire watched it with the detached focus of someone who had left a piece of herself behind in another state. When the plane landed, she stood with the rest of the passengers and walked off without rushing. She followed signs. She kept her head down. She did not check her phone. She had not turned it on since the night of the fire alarm and the dead lines. Outside the terminal, she took a taxi to a cheap motel by a highway. The clerk at the front desk did not ask questions. He took cash and slid a key card across the counter. Claire went into the room and locked the door. Then she locked it again with the chain. She stood there for a moment listening. No footsteps outside. No voices, no knock. The room smelled like stale air freshener and old smoke. The curtains were thin. Neon from a sign outside painted faint red lines across the wall. Claire sat on the edge of the bed and finally let the weight in her chest shift into something she could name. Grief. Not loud, not cinematic. Quiet and constant, like pressure behind the eyes. She pulled the Zippo from her pocket and held it in her palm. The metal was scratched, dented. The crest on the side was almost worn smooth. She ran her thumb over it and felt the tiny ridge of the engraving. A knock came at the door. Claire's spine stiffened. Her hand clenched around the lighter until the metal bit into her skin. The knock came again, steady, controlled. Not a motel knock from someone confused. Not a casual knock from housekeeping. Claire stood without making sound. She crossed the room slowly and looked through the peephole. Two figures stood in the corridor. Not black jackets this time. Plain clothes. One man, one woman. Both looked tired in a way that did not come from travel. The woman held up a small badge toward the peephole. Claire did not open the door. The woman spoke through the wood voice clear. Claire Monroe. We are with the FBI. We are here because of the call you made from a public phone. We are not here to arrest you. Claire's throat tightened. She kept her hand on the chain. The man added, his tone calm. We need to talk. You are in danger. You already know that. Claire stood frozen, listening for the lie in their voices, for the smooth edge she had heard in Hale. She did not hear it. She heard caution, fatigue, something careful, like they understood the floor beneath them might crack. Claire unhooked the chain and opened the door a few inches. The woman stepped back to show her hands. My name is Special Agent Lila Hart, she said. This is Special Agent Tom Reyes. Claire kept the door narrow. How did you find me? Claire asked. Agent Hart did not flinch. Credit card records were not used, she said. You paid cash at the motel, but you used this name when you checked in. The clerk remembered. He saw your scrubs in the news footage. He called a tip line. Claire's stomach sank. Agent Reyes spoke gently. We had to come fast, he said. Your uploads triggered alerts at multiple desks. Your call confirmed identity. The situation has federal priority. Claire's fingers tightened on the edge of the door. Victor Hale, she said. Agent Hart's eyes held hers. Yes, she said. Claire's mouth went dry. Is he dead? Claire asked. Agent Reyes shook his head. No, he said. Claire felt something cold settle in her ribs. Agent Hart watched her face, as if tracking the shift. He is in custody, Agent Hart said. Multiple charges. Federal, not local. Claire's breath left her slowly. Hawk, she said. Agent Reyes's expression changed slightly. Not confusion, not dismissal. Recognition. We recovered remains in the basement utility area, he said. The body is being identified with DNA confirmation. Claire's throat tightened. He has a name, she said. Agent Hart nodded. We know, she replied. We have reasons to believe he used more than one. We also have the files you sent. They include identity packets, photographs, operational logs. Claire stared at them, pulse hard in her ears. And Lakeview, she asked. The hospital. Agent Hart glanced down the corridor, then back. The main wards were evacuated quickly, she said. Generator systems prevented critical loss. A few staff were injured in the confusion. No fatalities in patient areas. There is significant damage below. The investigation is ongoing. Miles, Claire said the word, leaving her mouth before she could stop it. Agent Reyes answered. Dr. Miles Carter is alive, he said. He was treated for sedation and head trauma. He is being interviewed. He told us about the men in the unit. He also told us about you. Claire's jaw tightened. Did he tell you I hit a gunshot wound? She asked. Agent Hart held her gaze. He told us you acted to prevent further harm, she said. You can still face administrative consequences. But federal jurisdiction has shifted priorities. Claire swallowed. Agent Reyes's voice stayed even. We are not here to debate policy, he said. We are here because you are a witness and you are a target. Claire's fingers whitened on the door edge. I snapped the card, Claire said. The evidence is gone. Agent Hart shook her head. No, she said. It is not gone. Multiple outlets received it. The files were mirrored. We have copies. So do investigative desks that do not take kindly to intimidation. Claire felt her shoulders loosen by a fraction. Agent Reyes nodded once. The first arrest warrants were drafted before dawn, he said. Hale did not just walk into a hospital. He ran a network. He used false credentials, contracted muscle signal jamming equipment. He also committed offenses we can prove. Claire's throat tightened. He killed them, Claire said. The survivors. Agent Hart's expression sharpened. We are actively investigating multiple deaths, she said. Your files gave us locations and dates. We have been coordinating with field offices. Claire let out a slow breath. Her eyes burned, but she kept her face steady. I want families to know, she said. I want the families to know their people were not just missing. Agent Reyes nodded. We agree, he said. But we have to keep you alive long enough to do anything with this. Agent Hart held up a hand. We can talk inside, she said. We are not safe in the hallway. Claire hesitated, then opened the door wider. They entered the room without rushing. Agent Reyes checked the window with a quick glance, then sat in the chair by the desk. Agent Hart remained standing for a moment, watching Claire like she wanted to be sure Claire did not bolt or collapse. Claire sat on the edge of the bed again. Her hands were still. Her pulse was not. Agent Hart spoke first. "We need a statement," she said. Detailed. The hospital, the patient, the badge, the jammer, the men, the basement. Every sound, every phrase. Claire stared past her eyes on the wall. "He made it look like protocol," Claire said. "Like a quarantine. He used fear. It worked." Agent Reyes nodded. "That is consistent with what we are seeing," he said. Claire's gaze dropped to her lap. Her fingers touched the Zippo through the fabric. "He said he was saving the country," Claire murmured. Agent Hart's mouth tightened. "People like that always do," she said. Claire looked up sharply. "Do not make him small," Claire said. "Do not turn him into a cartoon." He knew exactly what he was doing. Agent Hart held her gaze. "Understood," she said. Agent Reyes leaned forward slightly. "Tell us about the code phrase," he said. Claire's throat tightened. "The river runs black at dawn," Claire said. Agent Hart wrote it down. "And the response?" Agent Reyes asked. "But the steel sings at night," Claire answered. Agent Hart looked up. "Where did you learn it?" she asked. Claire's voice softened. "My father," she said. "He whispered it when he thought nobody could hear." Agent Reyes's expression changed. "Your father's name," he said. "Raymond Monroe," Claire replied. Agent Hart's pen paused. "We saw that in the files," she said. "A Raymond Monroe associated with Unit 19, listed as Ironwood." Claire's chest tightened. "He never told us," Claire said. "He just carried it." Agent Reyes nodded slowly. "That is common," he said. Claire looked away. "It should not be common," she said. Agent Hart did not argue. She just kept writing. Claire gave them the details in pieces. The first scream, the way Hawk held the pitcher, the way his breathing changed when he saw the needle, the way the monitors spiked, the way Hale's badge looked too perfect, the dead phone lines, the elevator ding, miles on the tile, the alarm strobe, the stairwell echo, the basement air, the hiss of oxygen, the hatch ring under her fingers. Hawk's voice telling her to go. When she finished, the room felt quieter, as if the telling had used up the last of the noise. Agent Reyes sat back. "You did a hard thing," he said. Claire's gaze snapped to him. "Do not comfort me," Claire said. "Just do the work." Agent Reyes nodded once. "We are," he said. Agent Hart closed her notebook. "You cannot return to your life," she said. Claire's mouth tightened. "My life ended in room 304, Claire replied. Agent Hart did not flinch. "We can offer protective relocation," she said. "New identity, secure housing, monitored communications. You will not be alone." Claire's eyes narrowed. "I was alone in the basement," she said. "I was alone in the tunnel." Agent Hart's face softened slightly. "Not anymore," she said. Claire stared at her. The words did not land as comfort. They landed as something practical, something like a plan. Agent Reyes stood. "We need to move you," he said, "today." Claire's pulse jumped. "Where?" she asked. Agent Hart answered. "A safe location," she said. "A federal site. You will be interviewed further, then placed under protection." Claire's jaw clenched. "And the families," Claire said. "When do they know?" Agent Reyes looked at Agent Hart, then back to Claire. "Soon," he said. "But it has to be done carefully. Some names in those files are still operational. Some people will try to bury this again." Claire felt anger flare. She kept it under control. "I am not asking for careful," Claire said. "I am asking for honest." Agent Hart nodded. "Honest is coming," she said. Claire rose and grabbed her bag. It was small. It held clothing and nothing else. She slipped the Zippo into her pocket. Agent Reyes glanced at it. "Keep it," he said. Claire looked at him. "It is not mine," Claire replied. Agent Reyes held her gaze. "It belongs to the story now," he said. "And you are the one still breathing." Claire did not answer. She just zipped the bag and followed them out of the motel. They moved in an unmarked car. Agent Reyes drove. Agent Hart sat in the passenger seat. Claire sat in back with her hood up, watching the world pass through glass. The highway stretched under a bright sky that felt wrong after the rain and basement darkness. Trucks rolled by. Billboards promised easy food and easier happiness. Claire kept her hands still. They did not take her to a police station. They took her to a federal building with plain walls and controlled air. She walked through metal detectors and closed doors and hallways where everyone looked like they had somewhere important to be. In a small interview room, she repeated her statement on camera. She answered questions until her voice went hoarse. She drew diagrams of the ICU. She described Hale's men. She described the jammer device the guard had glimpsed. She described the sound of the basement. When it was done, Agent Hart slid a folder across the table. Inside were printed pages, photographs, names. One page held a crest that made Claire's throat tighten. The knight emblem. The bolt. Unit 19 printed in clean ink. Agent Hart spoke softly. "We have begun notifying next of kin," she said. "We will do it in phases. We have victim advocates." Claire stared at the list. Names of men, dates of birth, places of origin. She saw one name and felt her chest tighten. Raymond Monroe. Her father's name sat there like it belonged to someone else. Claire swallowed and forced herself to breathe. "I want to be there," she said. Agent Hart looked up. For what, she asked. "For the notifications," Claire said. "For the families. I want them to hear it from someone who understands what silence does." Agent Hart held her gaze for a long moment. "You would be exposing yourself," she said. Claire's jaw clenched. "I am already exposed," Claire replied. "I just have a roof and a badge watching the door now." Agent Reyes leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "She is right," he said. "She has credibility that paperwork does not." Agent Hart's mouth tightened. She looked back at the list. "We will consider it," she said. Claire did not push. She knew when pressure would snap a thing. That night, in a secure apartment with plain furniture and locks that clicked heavy, Claire sat at a table and copied names onto a notepad by hand. She did not trust only digital. She did not trust only systems. Her father's habits lived in her now, even if she hated it. When she finished, she stared at the notepad until the ink blurred. She took the Zippo from her pocket and set it on the table. The metal caught the overhead light. The crest was faint, but present. Claire flipped it open and lit it, letting the flame burn steady. She watched it until her eyes watered. Then she snapped it shut. The next morning, Agent Hart returned with coffee and a change of clothes that looked like it belonged to someone who wanted to disappear. She placed the items on the table without comment. Then she sat across from Claire. "We are going to one house," Hart said. "One. You will not speak your last name. You will not give details that compromise investigation. You will let the advocate lead. You will be present." Claire nodded. Her throat felt tight. They drove to a quiet neighborhood where the lawns were trimmed and the flags were out front. The kind of street where children rode bikes and the world pretended it was safe. The sky was bright. Birds moved between trees like nothing terrible had ever happened. Agent Hart parked down the block. An advocate in a navy blazer walked with them carrying a folder. Claire wore plain jeans and a jacket. Her hair was shorter, darker. Sunglasses hid her eyes. They walked up a driveway to a small house with a porch. Wind chimes clicked softly. The advocate knocked. Footsteps approached. The door opened. A woman in her late 60s stood there, hair gray, face cautious. Her eyes flicked to the badges, then to Claire's sunglasses, then back to the advocate's folder. "Yes," the woman said. The advocate spoke gently. "Mrs. Daly, my name is Marissa Stone. I am a victim advocate with the federal government. May we come in?" The woman's expression changed, wary, turning into something tighter. "Is this about my brother?" she asked. The advocate nodded. The woman stepped back, hand moving to the doorframe as if she needed it to stand. Inside the house smelled like coffee and laundry detergent. Framed photographs lined a wall. A young man in uniform in one frame. A wedding. A child on a baseball field. They sat in the living room. The advocate opened the folder and spoke slowly, carefully. She explained Unit 19. The missing men. The deception. The investigation. The woman's face drained of color. "No," she whispered. No. They told us he went missing overseas. They said there was nothing." Claire watched the woman's hands. They trembled. The way her eyes searched the room felt familiar. People did that when the world changed shape. The advocate slid a photograph across the coffee table. A faded image of a group of men, younger, tired, standing in jungle light with dirt on their faces. The photo looked like it had been taken quickly and then hidden for decades. The woman leaned forward, hands hovering over it like she was afraid to touch. "That is him," she whispered. "That is Danny." Claire's throat tightened. She did not speak. She let the advocate guide. The advocate described the evidence found in the files. The locations, the names of those responsible, the arrest. The woman's eyes filled with tears. She wiped them hard, angry. "Where is he now?" she demanded. "Where is his body?" The advocate answered with care. "Recovery efforts, forensic confirmation, ongoing work." The woman's voice broke. "All these years," she whispered. "All these years I thought he was just gone. Just vanished." Claire felt something twist in her chest. She leaned forward slightly, sunglasses still on. "Mrs. Daly," Claire said, voice low. The woman looked at her, eyes red. "Who are you?" she asked. Claire swallowed. "I am a nurse," Claire said. "I met someone who served with them. He died making sure the truth did not die." The woman stared, trying to parse the sentence. "He served with Danny," she whispered. Claire nodded once. "Yes," she said. The woman's hands pressed to her mouth. A sob escaped, raw and sudden. She shook her head as if she could shake the decades loose. Claire reached into her pocket and pulled out the Zippo. She did not open it. She held it in both hands like an offering. "This belonged to him," Claire said. "Not your brother, the man I met. He carried names so families would not be left in silence forever." The woman stared at the lighter, then looked back at Claire. "Why are you giving me that?" she asked. Claire's voice stayed steady. "I am not giving it away," Claire said. "I am showing you something real. Proof that he existed, that your brother existed in the story, not as a footnote." The woman's breath shuddered. The advocate watched quietly, letting the moment land. Claire set the Zippo back in her pocket. She did not leave it there. She kept it with her. They stayed for another hour. The advocate answered questions. Agent Hart spoke about resources and contact numbers and support. Agent Reyes waited near the doorway, eyes scanning the street through the window. When they finally stood to leave, the woman followed them to the porch. She looked at Claire with a face that held both gratitude and something sharper. "Did he suffer?" she asked. Claire swallowed. "Yes," she said, "and he held the line anyway." The woman nodded slowly, as if she had expected that answer in her bones. "Tell me his name," she said. Claire hesitated, then answered. "Frank Dalton," Claire said. "He called himself Hawk." The woman's eyes narrowed with recognition, not of the name, but of the way Claire said it. "Hawk," the woman whispered, like a call sign. Claire nodded. The woman looked past Claire toward the street, toward the sky. "Tell him," she said softly. Claire's throat tightened. "Tell him what Claire asked." The woman swallowed. "Tell him thank you," she said. "Wherever he is, tell him." Claire nodded once. "I will," she said. They walked back to the car. Claire did not look back at the house again until they were at the end of the driveway. Then she turned her head and saw the woman still standing on the porch, arms wrapped around herself, face lifted as if trying to breathe in something she had been denied for decades. Claire's chest tightened. As they drove away, Agent Hart spoke quietly. "That is why we do this carefully," she said. "It breaks people open." Claire looked out the window. "Silence breaks people open too," she replied. Agent Hart did not argue. Over the next weeks, Claire sat in quiet rooms and living rooms and kitchens, always beside an advocate, always with agents nearby, always with her name held close and her face partly hidden. She watched families learn the truth. She watched anger burn hot and grief burn slow. She watched old men stare at walls the way her father used to. She watched mothers and sisters and sons discover that missing did not mean forgotten, not anymore. Sometimes when the house was quiet and the questions ran out, someone would ask Claire about the code phrase. They would ask why a sentence about a river and steel could unlock a man's breathing. Claire would not explain it like a lesson. She would say it the way it had lived in her house. It was how they knew who was safe, she would say. It was how they knew they were not alone. At night, in whichever secure room she was sleeping in, Claire would sit by a window and hold the Zippo in her palm. She would not light it every time. Fire felt sacred now and dangerous. But sometimes she would flick it open and watch the flame steady itself, and she would breathe until her heart stopped racing. One afternoon, Agent Reyes met her in a hallway outside an interview room. "You should see this," he said. He led her to a small conference area where a television played on mute. A news anchor spoke with intense urgency words scrolling beneath. Federal inquiry expands. Contractor network exposed. Unauthorized operations. Corruption charges. Video footage showed agents carrying boxes from an office. It showed men being led in handcuffs through courthouse steps. It showed Victor Hale, again face tight with rage, shouting at cameras. He looked smaller than he had in the ICU hallway. Not harmless, just contained. Claire watched without moving. Agent Reyes turned the volume down further, then spoke. "They are naming the unit publicly," he said. "Not all details, but enough." Claire's throat tightened. "Unit 19, she murmured. Agent Reyes nodded. "Families will have a place to point their grief," he said. "A name." Claire stared at the screen. "A name is not enough," she said. No, Agent Reyes agreed. "But it is a start." Claire looked away. "Start is what I do now," she said. Agent Reyes studied her face. "You could go back to nursing," he said. "Under a new identity, new hospital, quiet life." Claire's mouth tightened. "I cannot walk into an ICU and pretend I do not hear doors differently now," she said. Agent Reyes nodded slowly. "Then what will you do?" Claire did not answer immediately. She reached into her pocket and held the Zippo fingers closing around the metal. She spoke quietly. "I will keep telling the families," she said. "I will keep making sure the story does not get filed and forgotten again. I will do what he died asking me to do." Agent Reyes watched her for a moment, then nodded once. "All right," he said. That evening, Claire sat alone at a small table and wrote letters by hand. Not emails, not messages. Letters. The kind that could be held. The kind that made truth physical. She wrote to a son who had grown up without a father. She wrote to a sister who had kept a bedroom untouched. She wrote to a widow who had never remarried because the story had no ending. Claire sealed each envelope and wrote addresses, slowly careful. Her handwriting shook at first, then steadied. When she finished, she set the pen down and leaned back. Her shoulders ached. Her eyes burned. Her chest felt heavy. She took the Zippo out and placed it on the table. For a long moment, she just looked at it. Then she flipped it open. The flame rose steady. Claire watched it and whispered, not loudly, not dramatically, just the way she would have said it in a quiet hospital room when a patient's breathing finally slowed. "Perimeter, clear, Sergeant," she said. She closed it with a soft click and sat in the silence that followed. A silence that finally felt different from the one she grew up with. Not empty, not hiding, just quiet.